Sorry about that, friends. Good evening and shalom and blessings to you all in the name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Welcome to this episode of Un-Apologetics, the show where we are unapologetic about apologetics, and I am your host, CJ Cox. I want to thank anybody who is here with us so far. I'm going to go ahead and do a little stalling for time and channel housekeeping while we wait for some people to join us, of course. Again, if you are here, thank you for being here. Obviously nice to have you around. If you are here, please consider liking and sharing this video. Please consider getting this out to all the different social media. Excuse me, sorry, I thought I got knocked offline here for a minute.
Again, if you are here.
Please consider subscribing, and please also consider hitting that bell so you get notified every time we go live. Please consider sharing this and liking this, sharing it to all the different social media platforms which you frequent. Of course, what good is a message without an audience to hear it? And if you guys are interested in following me anywhere else, you can look at me up at the Synagogue on Minds, BitChute, Rumble, Gab, Parler, Facebook, or Twitter. I can be found on any of those different platforms as the Synagogue. My display name is different on most of them. Sometimes it's Gabfly, like on Gab. Sometimes it's Poppin' J, like on Parler. But the point is, if you just look up the Synagogue, you will actually be able to find me because that's the actual tag name, right? And of course, very interested in having you guys there if you guys are interested in being there. Today is going to be a after show review part 2. So there will be a link dropped into the description, or excuse me, into the live chat in case anybody wants to join. But nonetheless, let's go through a couple channel housekeeping things real quickly before we get into that. And of course, shalom to Erica and Kevin. Thank you both for being here. So what I want to let you guys know is we have a really cool conversation coming up here on September the 2nd, which of course is still a little bit over 2 weeks away, 2.5 weeks away, just about. Maybe it is exactly 2.5 weeks away, actually. But nonetheless, we're going to have a conversation with Pastor Phil Fox on the issue, basically, of being Native American and Christian. That's going to be, I think, an absolutely fantastic conversation. There's obviously a lot that can be garnered from just listening to people with different cultural experiences. And I think that that's something that's incredibly important for people to see, especially in the Christian context, because a lot of times seeing people and their cultural experiences will actually illuminate things in your own culture that you maybe did not have illuminated before that perhaps you need to address. And so for numerous reasons, I think that's going to be a great conversation. But nonetheless, I think it's just something to note, right? Also have a couple of debates lined up on Standing for Truth's channel. One with Skyout on the issue of whether or not the Bible teaches a young or an old earth. And one with Praise I Am That I Am on whether or not the Bible hyperbolizes the Joshua conquest narrative. Now, in both of those positions, I would be taking your fundamentalist position, if you will. So I'm going to be taking the position that the Bible does teach a literal young earth. And I will be taking the position that the Bible does not hyperbolize the conquest narrative in any way, that it's literal, that it means what it says what it means, so on and so forth. And hopefully that'll be actually a really fun conversation for us to have. I got a couple of things that are in the works that I would love to announce, but unfortunately I cannot because they have not been set in stone. So I'm going to go ahead and hold my tongue on those things. But just know there is a lot of exciting content coming down the pipeline. I'll obviously mirror these debates and get them over here on this channel in case you guys don't see them on SFTs or anywhere else I happen to be, right? Because I also, go to MDD and the Gospel Truth and a couple of these other channels frequently. So definitely consider liking and subscribing. Also, if you'd like to help me turn this into a career, I certainly appreciate you, number one. And number two, you can do so by hitting up the Patreon link in the live chat, or not, excuse me, not in the live chat, in the description. With that, that's all the different channel housekeeping sorts of things. So let's go ahead and get a little bit into the topic today. And that is actually, well, I guess topic might not be the best way to put it. Yeah, it is. Topic, that's still accurate terminology. This is a part 2 to my response video to the Ruslan response video, after show review, whatever you want to call it, to the Ruslan KD AD Robles conversation that happened a little bit over a week ago on AD Robles' channel. And for those of you who don't know, Ruslan KD is a YouTuber and rapper who comes from a Christian perspective, confessed Christian perspective, and basically comments on cultural issues, Christian issues, and the intersection of those two. And then AD Robles is somewhat of an independent journalist, somewhat of a Christian apologist. A little, maybe you could call him like a Christian news hawk in a way, right? In the sense that he's like looking for news about specifically the Christian community, but also a YouTuber. And the two of them had a conversation that I think was very illuminating for numerous reasons. And of course, there is a already existing part 1 where I was responding to a lot of things that happened in the first 25 some odd minutes of this video that we have already watched. So if you guys are missing any of that context, definitely check out that video there. I'm going to kind of give you most of the context of the things that I was talking about by including just the last little bit of what we listened to as the beginning of this video. So really, it's not too necessary to go watch the older video, but if you'd like to catch up, there are definitely some things there that are going to be missing from this video. And that is not too far ago, maybe like a week ago, something like that. I'll drop it in the live chat here in just a moment. But yeah, that's going to be the response for today. The thing that they were talking about primarily had to do with woke Christianity. And Ruslan has a lot of what we, especially as fundamentalists, would consider to be liberal positions. He also has a lot of what we might consider to be, I don't know if alliance is the right word, but certainly association with people who are considered to be woke pastors, right? For example, what is the guy's name? Eric Mason. Eric Mason, that's his name. Now, of course, I think that, we can take that a little bit too far. I don't think that Ruslan is somebody to be completely discounted. I have personally already in the course of this video had at least one thing where I'm actually quite strongly on Ruslan's side of this. And I've actually now confirmed that my interpretation of AD was true, not only by listening to another video he had coming out after it, but also asking him personally, hey, this is how I took what it is that you communicated. And we're going to watch him say it again, just so that you guys can get the context. I just want to know, am I misrepresenting you? And in a slight way I was, so I will correct the slight way. But for the most part, the answer is no. And so I don't think Ruslan is somebody who can be completely discounted, but I also think that that's kind of part of the issue, is that, he's somebody who has what appears to me to be some wise things to say sometimes. He appears to be charismatic sometimes. He appears to have somewhat of a heart for the Lord and for other people, right? And yet, he does have some views that I think are very dangerous. He does have some views that I think are very ascriptural. He has a lot of what I would consider to be, if not deliberate blindness, then naivety. And, I say all of that in a respectful tone, just like I say any criticism of AD or anyone else on this channel in respect and love, right? I'm obviously not here to tear down these particular people, but obviously, these are public officials, or not public officials, excuse me, public individuals. And, they're putting out this kind of stuff in the public, and so it deserves to be critiqued. So we're going to go ahead and jump right into that now. Just give me one moment while I go ahead and actually need to do two things. I need to drop the link to the part 1 of this video in case anybody wants to watch it, and then I need to get my screen shared. So just 1 second. All right. So link is being dropped right now to the part 1 if you guys are interested. Obviously, this will post after we're live, so if you want to leave and go watch that now, that's totally fine with me. If not, that's also going to be there when you get out of here, so that's totally fine also, right? And then if you'll just give me one moment, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here, and we're going to jump right into this video. By the way, quick shalom to Jerome M. Erica, again, good to see you. Brother Nicholas is here. Spartan Theology is here. Is there anyone that I might have missed? I don't believe so. All right, awesome. And shalom, of course, to anybody else who is here but has not commented. You, of course, are just as welcome. I just can't greet you by name because you haven't commented, right? But anyways, just one moment. All right, so the video is AD and Ruslan KD sharpen some iron or something like that, and it's on AD Robles' channel. Let me go ahead and actually drop a link to this also into the live chat, because now that I'm thinking about it, I forgot to drop it into the description. I also didn't turn my camera on, so just a moment here. Let's go ahead and, man, I am just like utterly unprepared sometimes, and that makes for a poor show. And then I have the audacity to tell you guys I want to turn this into a career. But anyways, let's go ahead and get this camera on. Link to the video is now there in the live chat. Let me go ahead and also drop the StreamYard link, because this is an open room so that you guys can give your thoughts on this as well. And then let's go ahead and start the cam. There we go. All right, let's get into this. So the video is, no, wrong one. The video is AD and Ruslan KD sharpen some iron or something like that. And again, it is on AD Robles' channel. And so far, we've already gotten through about 25 minutes of the video, which you would see the response to. And really, we only actually responded to like 10 minutes of it, because 15 minutes of it is just AD and Ruslan giving their respective personal stories. But we had about 10 minutes of response to it in the previous video that I dropped to you guys in the description, right? And for the most part, that previous video and that 10 minutes was me critiquing AD on what I considered to be a somewhat problematic interpretation of what would be considered essential. Now, I'm not going to go ahead and tell you what that is, because I've actually started this clip early enough to where you're going to actually hear it from him, and I want him to be able to present the position as he did, obviously, before I come up here and potentially strawman it. So I'm going to play the clip so that you guys can listen to what the critique was, and then we'll just briefly address that so that everybody who didn't decide to click on the video is caught up with where I'm actually at in this video. And then we are going to move on to the rest of this video, because there's lots of critiques to be thrown around on both sides, I think. I don't think this was sloppy by any means, but I do definitely have a lot of my own personal opinions, right? Who cares what CJ thinks, but my own personal opinions on both of what these men had to say today. Or not today, excuse me, but when this video came out. I think it was like 2 weeks ago. Yeah, it says August the 2nd. But at any rate, let's get right into this. Shalom, and thank you guys for being here. Let me know if there's any problem as far as like hearing or anything like that. And yeah.
So let me tell you about a guy. There's a man who, he's a pastor, and he's got a small congregation, that kind of thing. Great preacher, very charismatic, not in the theological sense, but people like him, very engaging and all that kind of thing. And he's got his doctrine down. He believes in the Trinity. He's got, Jesus Christ was crucified, dead, and buried, rose on the third day. All the essentials in that regard down, right? But he's a racist.
Echo mute, bro. Okay. I can. Oh, Nicholas is actually here too. Shalom.
Shalom. Yeah, you mute your microphone, because the microphone's picking up your speakers, and that's a feedback loop. That's where the echo's coming from.
Okay, quick question. Is there any way to get this banner up while I'm looking at the AD and Ruslan screen? Because I don't want to have to like jump back to StreamYard to unmute every time. If I do have to, that's perfectly fine. But Is that possible? Do you know?
Yeah, and you should just screen share. Screen share the internet tab instead of your whole window.
Okay.
There's a few different screen share options. You can share entire screen, window, or internet tab.
Did not
You can
know
also, if you do the window, you can just put it on a separate window. But a window won't let you do audio, so you need to do internet tab.
So Microsoft Edge tab, cool, and then share audio. I did not even know that this was a thing. Look at me learning stuff. Okay, the audio still isn't here though, so maybe I have to minimize that. Right.
So did you get a chance to... Oh, and by the way, I won't say so much as I did last time since you let me say my piece last time. I'll disagree boldly, but I won't go on and on about it. Did you get a chance to see the John Harris video? That
I have not yet. I am
because
definitely
that's
going...
really specifically on this topic. It probably would have... I didn't say specifically, but it probably would have been good if you could have seen that before this, because it's going to inform this a lot in the long run. Because I think there's definitely a long run discussion to be had here as far as this other religion, and I think that's the difference of perspective, is that you don't see it as literally just a different religion. So it's as if they're like trying to bring Islam into the church, literally.
Yeah, and perhaps that's even a video that itself will need some level of review as well, just in context, since I am reviewing this one here. But without too much further ado, because we are already 17 minutes in, I'm going to go ahead and press play on this. I want to rewind a little bit because obviously I just distracted a bit. But nonetheless, we got everything good here. I'll go ahead and mute. I'll probably turn my camera off while I'm not speaking as well. And yeah, let's get right into this. Thank you guys for being here.
I mean, I think we're flowing. I think I'm doing
Yeah,
okay.
no, I think we're doing good. So let me. Yeah, no, I think we're doing good too. So let me tell you about a guy. There's a man who, he's a pastor, and he's got a small congregation, that kind of thing. Great preacher, very charismatic, not in the theological sense, but people like him, very engaging and all that kind of thing. And he's got his doctrine down. He believes in the Trinity. He's got, Jesus Christ was crucified, dead, and buried, rose on the third day. All the essentials in that regard down, right?
But he's a racist. Is that where you're going with this? But he's a white
supremacist?
No,
No, not at all.
Okay.
Not at all. So where I'm going with this is essentially he believes in the Imago Dei, and all that kind of stuff. But he regularly says things about blackness that are very suspect. Like he attributes violence and like theft to blackness, right? He doesn't do it all the time, and he teaches very well all the time, most of the time. But he'll often cite statistics. Chicago. There's so many murders in DC. I saw a statistic the other day that said that DC had more murders 3-1 to COVID deaths. Stuff like that. He's great in every area. He loves his wife, loves his children. He sets up food for the poor. He, all that stuff. He also, so he says some of this stuff, but he was attending the Charlottesville rally, and he did hold a tiki torch. And he said many times he doesn't agree with everything that they say, but he does agree with some of their grievances. Could you have unity with someone like that?
I think a lot of evangelicals right now do have unity with someone like that. I think that's already here. I mean, we can.
All right, so that was kind of a long, obviously, clip into it, but the reason was this is just a brief recap of everything in the first video that I did responding to this. So, and I want to be quick with it, right, so that we can move on to the rest of this and get to the rest of the response. But just to get this recap, my criticism here was obviously 80s, and of course he's just going to say it for himself in a couple, so you guys will just be able to see it. But the implication AD, of course, is making here is that he thinks this person should not be somebody who we would have unity or fellowship with. He thinks that this person is somebody who is violating the essentials, basically, right? And it takes a little bit to crack Ruslan, I'll be honest with you, and I don't like that. I wish he would just answer the question straightforward and say, well, a lot of evangelicals do believe this. Okay, that's not what we're asking, though. We're asking about what you believe, okay? By the way, Ruslan, I happen to agree with what you believe on this particular question, but just say it, right? Like, you don't have to hide what it is that you're trying to say. But basically, Ruslan's opinion is, yes, I think you can have unity with somebody like that. I think you should correct them. And he's gonna actually say that in a little bit, right? We're gonna have to watch a little bit more of the video for Ruslan and AD to make both of their opinions completely fleshed out. But in the end, Ruslan ends up saying yes, and AD ends up saying no. My issue with that was in that it was ironic to me, because in that particular regard, it seemed like AD was the one who was kind of using the wokeness there, and Ruslan wasn't, right? It is the woke crowd that turns back on people like Martin Luther and the SBC and all these other people and says, no, racism actually is an essential. If you're a racist, you can't be a Christian. Now, I would say if you're a racist, you are absolutely sinning. Absolutely sinning. God will correct you on that if you truly are one of his own. I do believe that. However, I think you get into real dangerous territory when you start to say that people who have a struggle with sin, even if it's a vicious struggle with sin, are actually violating the essentials. Now, I clarified one thing with AD, because he's open on his gab. He does allow people to message him so long as you don't require a novel from him. I clarified with AD to say, hey, is my interpretation of what you're saying true? That you're saying that it is actually an essential, racism is actually an essential as far as whether or not somebody is a Christian. And he did clarify for me that he is talking specifically about whether or not he would personally fellowship with this person, not necessarily that they are a Christian, which, to be fair, is different. I would not personally fellowship with a lot of people who I think do actually meet the qualification of Christian. So to be fair, that is different. However, it doesn't really address my problem, which is you're now basically leaving open an overwhelming majority of not only Christians in the past, but even Christians in the recent past, and even a lot of Christians today.
It is this, if I may say, brother.
Go ahead.
I think this is where there is a mistake, because, for instance, if someone owned a slave today, we would not view that the same as if they owned a slave before the Civil War. And I think there is the same difference of cultural context going on around us here in the United States, that we do not view a white supremacist today the same as we would view, and I'm using the real term white supremacist, not the fake one. We do not view a white supremacist today the same as we would a white supremacist from the past. Just like we know that everyone who participated with Nazi Germany in any way was wrong, but there is like some sympathy for the weakness that maybe some of us would not have been brave enough to be one of the ones killed in the concentration camps for resisting, you know? So we do understand in different circumstances, we respond differently to different things, and I think that factors in here.
Well, and I do definitely think that that's certainly an important thing to note. I won't say unfortunately in the sense that it doesn't clarify anything, because it does, certainly. As does, it is important to know that AD is talking about a minister, but obviously when I bring up like the SBC and Martin Luther and stuff like that, so am I. But the thing is, like the reason I think it's still problematic is because that cultural context does still exist in certain ways. For example, I want to give two examples that are very relevant to this conversation. The first is in a lot of not just Black communities, but really in a lot of American communities of color, it is somewhat of the cultural norm to look down on white people, right? And it's been generationally that for at least a couple generations at this point, right? That doesn't obviously excuse it, much like it didn't excuse it in the 1850s or 60s or even the 1960s, right? But it does still allow us, I think, to have a little bit more sympathy when we're having somebody who's saying those sorts of things, right? We are obviously dealing with a culture that is basically propagandized daily to think that, hey, this race of people is trying to keep you down. You know what I mean? And again, I'm not saying that justifies the thought. It doesn't. But I do think that it does create an ambiguity behind whether or not we can say that's actually an essential. And I understand, there's obviously even nuances within that, right? Somebody like, Eric Mason appears to be kind of a real bad racist, honestly. And that's vile, you know what I mean?
I want to mention, as soon as I was describing that, I noticed that that same sort of sympathy now that people are being propagandized differently. And I think that's something when all this propaganda was suddenly breaking loose really, really directly, which was right about the same time of all the Wuhan virus masking.
Mm-hmm.
Then when it started breaking through really directly, it was something that we didn't want. It was like, we are willing to discuss these things, but not in these racist assumption terms of CRT. And we're not willing to give it momentum and an inch to take a foot and all that, And I do think it's time to address things differently. It's that's more of a long-term tactical talk, but yeah, so I do have ear in this, I'm not just I'm not stiff-necked here. And yeah.
Well, and I appreciate that. And I doubt AD will ever watch this video, but if he does, I'm certainly willing to have a conversation with him as to why I feel the way that I do versus the way that he does. To be honest, I would be surprised whether, I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't feel the same way as me at the end of the conversation, but I would be surprised if he didn't at least see my point. Because AD is a pretty, from everything I've been able to gather, is a pretty exceptionally honest person. But that, that was my big concern. And by the way, I did manage to clarify one thing with AD when it came to, he brought up, having some sympathy with the people at Charlottesville. He was talking specifically about the racists, because that kind of made me think a little bit. The march originally was for the preservation of the statue. Quite a bit of in fact, most conservatives sympathized with it before everything actually happened. And I asked him about that personally, and he's, no, I don't care anything about statues. I'm talking specifically about the racism. So on that one, that's something I want to correct the record for. But of course, even with some of the record corrected, there is a little bit of disagreement between him and I. But I don't want to get too much into it, because we got a whole hour-and-a-half long video talking about that, right? So let's go ahead and press play here and continue. Unless there's something else you want to say as a last word, brother, and then we're gonna just go ahead and press play on this again.
No, we're good.
Cool.
Play around that, but there are people already that adhere and throw out false statistics and be hyperbolic about things that aren't really the truth about an issue, right? So I think some of that's already here. So can I have unity with someone that
I do want to point out, though, that I really wish Ruslan would just answer the question. That does drive me crazy, and that happens so many times in this video. He didn't ask what a whole bunch of people might potentially believe in some places in the universe. You know what I mean? He asked you, Ruslan, which you believe. So speak for yourself. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. That's annoying. Perhaps that's less annoying to some other people, but to me, I think, hey, what do you feel about this? Well, a lot of people feel like, I didn't ask what a lot of people feel like. I asked what you feel like. So please answer the question more directly.
I think it's an indication that he's more tactical than honest. And that is two different things. Honesty is let's both be trying to submit to truth and be bringing our honesty to the table, and we see where that brings us. And, not necessarily that we always change our minds easily, but it's honesty, And tactical is just completely different. And as far as Christian discussions go, I have a huge criticism with Ruslan for that.
Yeah, and I even agree with. By the way, I'm just sharing some of the comments on the screen that I like. But I do even agree with that, because it happens a lot in this video. I've seen it happen a couple of other times in other Ruslan videos. And it's a lot of the times, like I said, I even agree with what his answer is. It's just, I don't like this whole wishy-washy, I'm not actually going to say it. And if I disagree with it, who cares? or if anyone else does for that matter, right? Who cares? Say what it is that you actually believe. And let's actually get to an honest pursuit of truth here. But I do just want to acknowledge that despite the fact that my primary criticism in this portion is on AD, I was really irritated with the way that Ruslan answered this question. And that is a consistent problem throughout this. But nonetheless, let's continue.
Yeah, I'm not asking about them. I'm asking you.
So
notice AD just called him on
with someone that has some covert racism in their heart. I challenge them regularly. I have people in my life that are like, man, that's kind of questionable, and we unpack these ideas. What I'm not saying is that they're racist and they're intentionally being racist. I'm saying that people can have biases, have subtle biases, subconscious biases, and not know their own racial partiality, if you will. So I think we're already dealing with some of that.
So
would you disagree? Hold on. Let's back up. Would you disagree?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, I would. But just to
why?
Sure. I'll.
And just to clarify, right? I have spoken back and forth on Gab with AD about this. So, obviously, he agrees with what he agrees with, and I agree with what I agree with, and that's fine. But I do just want to be clear. We have clarified that I'm at least not straw manning him or misrepresenting him. So in case you guys are saying, well, I don't know if AD really means what I think he means there. He does. He's a pretty honest guy, honestly. I've noticed for the most part, you can actually take him at face value, which is great. I actually really appreciate that. But nonetheless, I also want to just let you guys know, this is about where the end of this conversation is about where the disagreement with AD ends and the disagreement with Ruslan starts to begin.
I'll answer in just a second, but so just to make sure you're clear, so we do have liberty, in your view, to attend, a rally like the Tiki Torch rally in Charlottesville, and to say that blackness is, this negative thing that attributes, it's attributable to violent tendencies and stealing. So we have the liberty to do that kind of thing, in your view, to believe those and teach those things.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying historically, the church.
I do think it is dangerous to mix those things. I thought it was stupid for people to march with people who were clearly neo-Confederate at the Charlottesville rally. It wasn't very tactful. What's the word? Tactful? I mean, when you're using tactics, good tactics. What is the word there? I don't think tactful is it. Anyways, whatever the word is, it wasn't very that.
But strategic?
Strategic is probably the word, yeah.
I don't know which one's which. I think they get mixed up for each other because it's such an abstract difference, the difference between tactical and strategic.
But the point is, I did think that was stupid. There was a famous conservative commentator, Gavin McInnes, who even said as much. He said, look, I agree that we shouldn't take down the statue. I'm not marching at this rally because there are white supremacists there, and I'm not one of them. And that was an example of somebody being intelligent when they dealt with this. So it was certainly stupid, but I don't think that it's something where it's like, oh, I can't have fellowship with somebody like that anymore. You know what I mean? And well, I don't know. I shouldn't even comment on that because I already said what I was going to say, and we want to get to the other details, right?
Church has, okay, if we're going to be honest, the church has.
Sure.
And I'm saying, and I think there's questionable things happening right now with something as simple as the church getting behind the birder conspiracy with Barack Obama, right? Like that was a flat out lie, and the church perpetuated that lie. A lot of Christians did, right?
Sure.
And I would say there was some racial undertones there. And that was not cool. That was not okay. That was not truthful. That was not honorable. That wasn't okay. And so I think that's already happened.
See, and here you have an example of, I think, something that, and AD's not trying to be pedantic, so he doesn't call Ruslan on this particular problem. But here we do see an example of like some of the, what I would consider to be liberal propaganda kind of bleeding in. The fact of the matter is whether or not you think the birther movement is completely insane or not, it was not based in racism. It was based in a very legitimate fear that Barack Obama could potentially have been a non-natural born citizen.
And people having ulterior motives to want to take advantage of that, but not particularly racism at all.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, come on, guys. There were black people, Latinos, and immigrants who believed it. Like, there's, you know what I mean? Like, that's just and propagated it even, right? So it's just false to say that that's somehow, the church propagating racism. It's not. It's not even close, right? And by the way, I don't think it was universally agreed on by Christians, nor was it universally agreed on by conservatives, even for that matter. That Obama was not born here. It was, in the end, a fringe group of people, right? I personally don't agree with that. I don't think that there's anything necessarily wrong with being a conspiracy theorist, though. Like, if you feel that way, all right, fine, let's argue about it. It's cool. We have flat Earth debates on modern day debate. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not scared of ideas, but at the same time, it's like to pretend that this was like the church propping up racism. I think that's not close to true. And I even do think there's examples of the church sometimes doing that. Like, I've mentioned the SBC Foundation in 1845 numerous times, but that almost makes it all the more worse that he fabricates one that doesn't exist. You know what I mean? You look like you wanted to say something. I noticed you unmuted.
Yeah, just what you mentioned about AD didn't want to be pedantic. And that's just another case where it's like, these are ways that someone who's manipulative in a discussion can really deliberately like play against you. Is like in order to clarify what's wrong in the discussion, you look like you're being nitpicky or something. It just makes it hard to have the discussion, And I think for someone who was in a tough discussion where the other person was making it very difficult, AD was he did an amazing job here. Some of the best debating I've seen as far as dealing with the rhetoric and not letting someone just get away with rhetorical tricks.
Yeah, and I think it is, it's one of those things too where it's like he's, I mean, if he nitpicked at every single detail, this video would have been like 7 hours long. You know what I mean? Because there are little things like that where I think Ruslan is just seriously mistaken at best. And I'm not the first person to say that, by the way. He's had interviews with a couple of people on his channel. One, a rapper named Bryson Gray. One was actually Dr. Michael Brown again, right? He seems to like put his head everywhere, it appears. There was a third one too that I'm trying to remember. I think it was Leighton Flowers. Might have been Leighton Flowers. I don't know. Anyways.
Well, one last thing I want to mention about what AAD was doing here is that he knows that like Ruslan's making these mistakes, and that's the whole thing, is he's just letting Ruslan hang himself over and over again. It's like AD wants to focus on refuting things that are worth refuting, and the things that Ruslan says that just kind of prove the point. They prove that Ruslan is incorrect and they don't make him look good. AD doesn't bother to address those. He just takes those as a win. And this would be one of those examples, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, the point to just finish briefly with bringing up those interviews that Ruslan has had on his channel is just to say that there are other people who have noticed that Ruslan appears to be, at the very least, incredibly naive on some certain things, and potentially just not willing to actually see certain things that are going on. But nonetheless, let's go ahead and continue on. Sorry, just wanted to briefly let you guys know. Obviously, we have a specific topic, so don't just come in with anything. But link is in the live chat if anybody has comments on this video.
Happen, do we dismiss all those people as heretics? Do we dismiss all those people as no, I have to deal with these people
Sure.
are in my church, these people are everywhere. I think we so how do we have these conversations is the question, not do I have fellowship?
Sure.
Are they going to be in my personal circle? Probably not. Are they going to go to a church that's around here? Yeah, I talk to people regularly about this kind of stuff, AD.
Well, I'm not saying you shouldn't talk to them, but
Yeah.
You said that Christians don't have the liberty to believe and teach those things, but yet you would have, fellowship with them. So they actually do have the liberty in your view, even if you think they're wrong. Because I think you're wrong on not being a Calvinist, but I agree. We have unity in the essentials. You don't have to be a Calvinist to be my friend or to be at my church. Right. But So I guess that's what I'm asking. Like, so you're saying we actually do have the liberty to be in error on some of that stuff?
People are in error, and I'm not saying that's a good liberty. People already are there.
Again, right? You guys see that he is like, he does have this way of answering the question, right? And again, I've already told you guys, I agree with Ruslan's answer to the question, but he always has got to retreat back to this. Oh, well, people do, and it's like, that's not. Throw that out and just say what you believe and have a talk. Anyways, sorry, I'm gonna speed this up a little bit so we can get through this. Go ahead.
Okay. In this specific case, I think I get where Ruslan is coming from, and I think AD does sort of just end this bit with like, okay, he'll think about it later, and they move on to another section. But there's a moment here where Ruslan is going to out himself as unbiblical, and then he just kind of goes into free fall at that point.
Yeah, and you guys will definitely know what that is, although there's some people in the live chat now who I do know will disagree. But of course, I welcome that, right? This is an apologetics channel. But you guys are definitely, I mean, you know where we're coming from. So you know exactly what we're going to be talking about here in a second, right? But anyways.
Sure.
Is it good? No. Is it beneficial? No. Right.
Sure.
Are Armenians who have God, absolute free will of view of God, is that good? No, I would say they're wrong on quite a few things. Being able to lose your salvation, I would say they're wrong on that, right? So I think there's degrees to this, right? I think you're using a hyperbolic example of white supremacy, and is it okay to fellowship with somebody in white supremacy, and would we then have church discipline for the person that's a white supremacist, and then we're going to take that, we're going to apply it to every other thing, whether it's voting Democrat, whether it's voting, being quote unquote woke. I understand your logic. I'm saying we're already here. It's already tolerated, and we're already dealing with it.
Right. No, I understand. And it's not that it's not that covert of an op on my side. I absolutely don't think that there's liberty for a Christian pastor to preach racism from the pulpit at all. I can't imagine why there would be.
But
now that I do agree with AD on. That is obviously, I don't think that would be enough to dismiss somebody from clergy entirely. I think that correction would be in order. And then if they did not heed correction, of course, you go down the path you go down. But AD is absolutely right about that. There's a higher standard for the pastor than there is for the lay people. The reason I don't go as far as
I just want to mention that's what AD's content is about, is false teachers.
Well, and that's a fair point for sure. The reason I don't go as far as to say they should be completely dismissed is because I do still think in the end, the Southern Baptist Convention started off good. In the end, Martin Luther was probably a believer who did good things. Even people like, C.S. Lewis, for example, his reason for not being a Catholic was not necessarily, although he had a big problem with popery, but it was not necessarily a bunch of theology things. It was actually sort of what you might call like a Catholicophobia in a modern terminology, right? He kind of hated it. And he blamed his origin in Belfast for that. But of course, that's a pretty sad excuse. The point being that obviously if your opposition to Islam is because you hate Muslim people, that's a big flaw on your part, right? So do I dismiss Lewis or the SBC or Martin Luther, the early SBC, obviously not today's, or Martin Luther? No, but they were real wrong, and they caused some damage in those regards. C.S. Lewis less so than the rest of them, because thank the Lord he happened to hate a legitimately wrong religion, right? But
I don't know if it's a distraction, but in C.S. Lewis's case, I mean, could it just be spiritual discernment, and so he had a righteous distaste for Romanism?
It totally could be. And I've often wondered if maybe he just articulated it in such a way to where it seemed like he hated Catholic people instead of hating Catholicism, because that's totally possible. People make mistakes all the time. Just because C.S. Lewis is a great writer doesn't mean he can't do it, right? And there's only a couple quotes we have from him on Catholicism because he didn't like to talk about it. Mainly because I don't think he was incredibly interested in tearing a bunch of people down, really. But he maintained pretty clearly that he was like, I just do not have respect for that. And he often said it was a Belfast thing. which, whatever that means, I guess. I guess to a certain extent it might be true, right? Northern Ireland has a big problem with Catholic terrorism and stuff like that. But that was my interpretation of it, actually, was that because of the fact that he grew up in an area where Catholics were kind of violent towards people like him, that he kind of had a distaste for Catholicism. Although I do know he was firmly opposed to popery. So that's an argument kind of in favor of what you just said, right? It could just be that he actually had some solid spiritual discernment, and maybe he just didn't know where to place it, right? Maybe he kind of noticed it's like, man, I mean, they have this popery and they also seem to endorse terrorists. Perhaps these guys are not good, and it just only went that far. You know what I mean? But
yeah, because usually C.S. Lewis is much better with philosophy than spiritual things. So not knowing where to place it would make sense. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But all this to say, AD is right to have indignation towards this sort of thing, right? Because especially in the case like Martin Luther's hatred towards Jews is partially responsible for the Holocaust. Like, no doubt. Absolutely no doubt. It influenced German anti-Semitism for the next to this day, even, right? The idea that like the spiritual patriarch of Germany, namely Martin Luther, was an anti-Semite has been deeply, deeply poisonous to German theocratic nationalism, and people like Hitler have used that to their advantage, right? Now, Martin Luther
that's
himself,
also why we need to never elevate men, It's like proper respect for proper reason and proper context, and that's it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is 100% true, because I believe I will meet Martin Luther one day on the other side, and I believe what he did was absolutely amazing for the church. However, elevating him to that status, as Brother Nicholas was just saying, is precisely what allowed somebody like Hitler, who, by the way, didn't care at all about what Martin Luther had to say. He was a non-Christian. But to actually abuse that and say, oh, hey, German Christians, Martin Luther doesn't like Jews, and already some people have been abusing this for you, so I'm just kind of preying on a little mentality that's already there. Let's put these guys, away from you. Let's mark them, and, while I'm doing some stuff away from them, I can then convince other people to just slaughter them, right? The point just being that I understand AD's point. Like, these things can be hugely problematic, and that is why the Bible is quite clear that, the church leaders do need to be held to a higher standard. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I got distracted by something which is not on topic, so I'm not going to mention it.
Real quick, I do want to say, because I see some new people in the live chat. Mary and Veckel and Jill, or Rebuke and Reprove now, and Honesty Angel, shalom to all of you, and thank you for being here. Hope you guys enjoy. If you have any comments, there is a link in the live chat. I'll drop another one here just in case. But we are having a open mic, but it's not open topic. It is specifically about the video. So if you don't have, go ahead.
I wanted to be clear about the warning with the influence that Martin Luther. Simply the fact that the people, the Christians of Germany, since his time, have like celebritized what he did in such a way that they take it into their own personal identity as an individual, and they don't really mean to. It just subconsciously, like, naturally happens. But we have the Bible that teaches us not to do that, and to know better, that, our only teacher is Messiah. Call no man on earth teacher, call no man on earth father. And so because sometimes what we don't think is spiritually dangerous, it's like, for them, what they thought about Martin Luther would no longer make sense unless anti-Semitism is kind of okay. And we don't want to identify with people in such a way that we start identifying with their sins. We don't even want to identify with our own sins. That's the whole point of identifying with Jesus Christ. Then it's no longer I who sin, but sin dwelling in my flesh. I know where to identify. I know where I'm looking toward, Jesus.
Yeah, exactly. And, it's because of the fact that we look towards Jesus that things like these blind spots in people's theology and belief, really black spots, they can be forgiven, right? It's precisely because of trust in Jesus and not trust in their own doctrines. And frankly, it is a common thing for people to, they glorify C.S. Lewis, John Wesley, Martin Luther, John Calvin, you know what I mean? All these different men. I mean, how many men have been glorified throughout the years? And most of these men, I think, in fact, all of the men I mentioned, I think were genuine Christians. And I think would be disgusted with the way that people treat their legacies. But, the point is, it is a consistent problem because it's a human problem. We deify men, whether we like to or not. And the Bible is our warning against that, which I think is the best way to protect against what AD is talking about. But nonetheless, in conclusion, I do want to say I do agree with AD about, it's not, so you don't have liberty to preach from the pulpit something as vile as what some people have certainly preached about race. But let's go ahead and continue in with the video. We're already about 50 minutes deep, but we'll probably do this about 2.5 hours. So that we can get some solid commentary in. I might even do a part 3 on this. I'm not going to commentate on the entire 2-hour video. But there's a lot of good information here. So, and I am going to now speed it up, by the way, by maybe like 1.5. Both AD and Ruslan are pretty slow talkers, so that shouldn't actually affect anybody's understanding. If it does, definitely drop me a note in the live chat, and I will definitely slow it back down.
But it happens and you don't rebuke it, right? When
Where?
I'm sure we can track down information. Okay, let me point to a really practical example.
Sure.
Let me point to a really practical example.
That's going to be super fast for people.
Kind of in the fundamentalist crowd, and he went
on. We'll go to 125.
I definitely think what will save more time is if we discipline to commentate less. Yeah, and I said most of the things I would say about the discussion in general, so that leaves me a lot less to say now.
For sure. Hopefully, I'll just knock it down to the 1.25. If that's also too fast, we'll definitely take it down. But yeah. Real quick, Veckel says, what was the conversation basically about anyway? It's sort of a combination of things. If you want a general one-word answer, it's really wokeness and liberalism in a specifically Christian theological context. But as far as specific topics, racism was addressed, women in preaching roles was addressed, alliance with certain people who preach certain doctrines was addressed, Eric Mason was addressed, and this is by no means an exhaustive list.
on the news and he goes, God's judgment for homosexuality, 9/11 was God's judgment for homosexuality, right? Was that a true statement?
Yeah, so I think that I wouldn't have said that God is judging a specific thing in a specific way. However, absolutely, it is true that God uses calamities like that to judge rampant immorality, of which homosexuality is one of them. So depends on how he said it.
So Jerry Falwell was right to you,
right? So what I was going to say was it depends on exactly how he said it.
Okay.
But absolutely, I wouldn't shy away from that. The Bible tells us that God judges countries for those kinds of things.
Yeah. So you would align yourself with Jerry Falwell. So now let's move away from hypotheticals. Let's move away from hypotheticals.
What does that have to do with racism, Ruslan?
Because I think it's homophobic, and I don't mean homophobic in the sense of like we need to protect the gays. I mean like you're literally going against somebody, and then you're also blaming 9/11 on a catastrophe, and God's causing 9/11. I think, can God use it?
Now, so this is obviously an important thing, needs to be addressed, because first and foremost, I agree with everything AD just said, like beginning to end. I also would not have been as specific as Jerry Falwell was, saying that this man, or saying that this event rather was specifically God's judgment, specifically for this sin, right? I wouldn't have been that specific unless you got some kind of prophetic vision or something like that, right? But of course God judges people, or judges cultures rather. He also judges people, judges cultures for rampant homosexuality. Obviously. Like, I kind of wonder in this particular instance what Bible Ruslan is reading, because that's not even remotely, topic of dispute. He judges.
I also think it would have been helpful if AD had clarified that nuance the way you just clarified it.
Well, and I do appreciate that, because obviously, and of course, once again, AD is going to have to let some things slide, right? Just for the sake of not turning the video into a 7-hour long video. But like, it is one of these things where it's like, Ruslan, you know the story of Noah's Ark. You know the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. You know Moses's 10 plagues, right? You know Deuteronomy 28, I imagine. If you don't know Deuteronomy 28, bare minimum, you know that the results of Deuteronomy 28, the exile, right? And if you want to say, oh, well, that was all the Old Testament. Okay, well, 70 AD was not the Old Testament. And that's when Rome destroyed the Temple of Jerusalem and sacked the city of Jerusalem and kicked all of the Jews out of Jerusalem and renamed it to some weird pagan thing that is fleeting me at the moment, but I can't remember. And all of this other stuff, right? That was clearly in New Testament times. Numerous books of the Bible have already been written, of the New Testament in particular. Or talking about revelation and future judgment, right? And all this sort of stuff. The only thing to say that, or the only point in saying that, is to say the only problem with what Jerry Falwell said is the specificity of saying this particular event was definitely God's judgment for this particular sin. But his general point, which is that God is judging this nation for our rampant debauchery, and it's obvious. And he could have even said that exact thing and said, look to 9/11 as an example. And that would have been a perfectly biblically coherent statement.
Well, and I think it's more likely that 9/11 was because we've let very corrupt, villainous elites, hijack everything, all the value we create as a people, right? All the economy we create as a people, and they do evil with it. And now they're scheming with the beast with it. And we've been electing these people instead of saying, like, okay, we can't vote for these parties. We have to get serious and do something real about this instead of buying into the next hype, And I shook my head at them because it was so absurd, like the hype over Obama, And then it's like, I think they just played us the exact same with Trump. Myself specifically, And it's just like, hopefully God grants us repentance because judgment's coming down in full right now,
Yeah, absolutely. And that's really the main thing that I would be wanting to communicate is that it is obvious. It doesn't. And by the way, I know there's other problems that people have with Jerry Falwell. I personally think Jerry Falwell Sr. was a fine teacher. I don't think he was a great teacher, but I think he was a fine teacher. Jerry Falwell Jr. obviously has his problems, but I do think that his general point being made there which is basically that it is obvious that God is judging America for our rampant debauchery. That is not even close to disputable, in my opinion. I mean, regardless of what you believe about 2020, right? The fact of the matter is at least this: America's economy tanked. America's people got incredibly polarized. Americans lost faith in their electoral cycle, and people started to get real violent. And we have perhaps hit a point of no return. Regardless of it, right? That's not talking about whether or not you're conservative or liberal. That's not relying on whether or not you're an atheist or a Christian. Has nothing to do with whether or not you feel that there's any sort of conspiracies afoot. That's just the bare facts, and everybody can confirm those facts at least. If that is not evidence that God is absolutely judging this nation, I don't know what possibly could be, other than, of course, a prophet coming down and saying it blatantly. But I don't think that we as Christians should need. I mean, sometimes God will spell it out because there are dense Christians for sure. I've been a dense Christian before, but I don't think we should need God to spell it out for us, right? We should try to discern the signs of the times, so to speak. But anyway,
when the fig tree's branches are tender, summer is near.
Exactly. Thank you, Brother Nicholas.
Did in its passive, well, yes, but I think you're going into some really dark market territory to attribute that kind of stuff, and I think that stuff should be called out, and I think that stuff should be talked about, whether it's full-on embracing of racism or misrepresenting races and creating hyperbolic straw man arguments about things that just aren't accurate. I think that is that is also false. And we don't see that. So we don't see that accountability from
we got to dig
people
in a little bit.
within the religious right circles. We don't see a ton of that. So when someone misspeaks on the other side, you're quick to make a video about it. But when someone does something very questionable, I don't see AD making videos about it.
Right. But so here's the problem, Ruslan. So you said that you don't hear me calling out racists against blacks on my channel. And I said, name one. I'll be glad to. And then you went to what you call the homophobic statement, which I don't understand how it's homophobic, but that's a side issue. What does that have to do with racism? I'd be glad to call out a racist pastor. Name one and I'll call him out. We got to tell me what he says too.
You want me to name you some? Okay. How about
just show me some.
Westboro Baptist, do you think what they do is cool?
What do they do?
They line up in front of funerals and they hold the okay. So would you call them out?
Yeah. Yeah. The Westboro.
Have you called them out?
No, because my channel is about social justice.
Okay. So you have.
Now, this is a thing that I also think needs to be fleshed out for a couple of reasons. The first reason being that I don't think that the Westboro Baptist Church has been in the news for like a decade. So that's obviously an important thing to note. The second thing, of course, is that again, Ruslan fails to mention a racist pastor, which is what AD asked for, right? And I think if you believe that there is an abundance or even a vocal minority of racist white pastors in the country, you should be able to mention at least one, right?
Especially if there's any problem with any influence at all, in the age of mass media access,
Yeah, exactly. Like 100%. Like, and twice he was pressured. Twice he gave an answer, and twice he, by his own admission, because notice he doesn't in any of the examples list, he says, in the first one, well, he did this thing that was homophobic, and he says in the second one, well, they line up at, funerals of soldiers and stuff like that, right? In neither of the examples can he actually give a racist pastor. Now, I'm sure somebody out there can, certainly, because we live in a fallen world, and humans are inherently terrible, in my opinion, and I think in the opinions of any rational person, right? Is there a white racist pastor somewhere? Sure, absolutely. Ain't nobody heard of him, right?
Yeah, I mean, they're specifically relegated to irrelevancy, I think.
Exactly.
And that's sort of the point, is like, there's nothing more we can do than that unless we want to be like violent, oppressive, bad people, and we don't want to do that.
Exactly.
So at some point we got to let them do what they're going to do, but they're relegated to irrelevancy. That's a good sign about one specific point regarding the overall culture. Now let's see if Planned Parenthood's murder spree can be relegated to irrelevancy because no one will participate. That would be awesome, Yeah,
absolutely. And the third thing that I do want to note here that I think needs to be pointed out, I am still not like very familiar with AD, right? I'm obviously getting more and more familiar as time goes on, but it's still only been 3 weeks to a month since I heard of this man. In fact, the gentleman in the room with me right now is the one who showed me AD Robles. That's Brother Nicholas, in case you guys are being a little bit dense. I'm just kidding. At any rate, I don't know that he's ever called out people who you might consider to be on the fundamentalist side or on a conservative side or whatever you want, whatever terminology you want to use, right? But I know for certain that a lot of people have. I know for certain, for example, James White has called out the King James onlyist movement. I have called out numerous times the NIFB movement, right? There are tons of other examples, I'm sure. Doug Wilson has called out, I can't remember who exactly it was. I think it was the NAFB. But I do remember he called out some group of, considered to be fundamentalist Christians. Man, I'll have to actually refresh myself on what that even was. The point just being that if your point, Ruslan, is to say that all of the people who are calling out wokeness are not calling out people on their side, that is far from accurate. And if it's accurate in the case of AD, then so what? His channel does not have to be about, like, sports channels that are about football are not obligated to talk about hockey. That's obviously ridiculous. It's like, well, it's a sport. It's okay, well, I'm talking about football. And even further, if you're a sports channel that's like about the San Francisco 49ers, then you're not obligated to talk about the New York Jets or a team in the Arena Football League or anything else like that. You know what I mean? So, number one, it's just not accurate at all to insinuate that people on the conservative side do not call out undesirables in their own ranks. In fact, we do it far more often than anybody on the other side. And secondly, even if AD doesn't, which I'm not saying that he doesn't because I don't know, but even if he doesn't, so what, right? His channel has a specific theme. That's fine. Your channel has a specific theme, Ruslan, right? You talk about cultural issues for the most part, things related to music, and this sort of woke thing, whatever you want to call it. I don't really know how exactly to describe it other than that, but it's something that's frequently being talked about, right? Mainstream pop culture Christianity. That's your shtick. And it's fine. Everybody has a shtick. My shtick is being a fundamentalist. You know, it's like, I don't know. Anyways, I can.
Oh yeah, later on, we can see me in the side chat. It's on top chat replay right now, so it's skipping some stuff. But I call AD a fundy a few times, that sort of thing, because Ruslan accuses him of being a fundamentalist, and he is. And AD apparently doesn't call himself a fundamentalist. You're a fundy.
Yeah, it is funny. I have that exact same problem with James White. He says he's not a fundamentalist, and it's like, but you so are though. Like, you totally are. And it's not a problem, right? Obviously, I own the title with pride, but it's just, and I appreciate that some like you guys who are in the live chat and Brother Nicholas as well do as well, right? Because it's just an accurate description. There's nothing wrong with it. But it is hilarious. There's a lot of people who are totally fundamentalists who just have like an aversion to the term for some reason. I think it has a lot to do with the, NIFB and stuff like that. But
well, and and propaganda of all different sorts and stuff. And it's just like, we got to walk on that battlefield like we got miracle power around us, because that's the one battlefield where we do have miracle power around us, the spiritual battlefield. So we got to start just walking and living and warring like it. Start yesterday. So then the thing with AD, he was responding to what he saw as a change in what I would think of as worldly type, mainstream evangelical pastors. But I guess at the time he thought they were sound conservative. And when AD talks about conservative, he's talking about Christianity, not politics.
right.
So he's talking about biblically conservative. And the fact is the Republicans try to appease biblical conservative votes and the Democrats don't. So that's the reason there's some commonality, but that doesn't mean it's what AD is talking about, So he's talking about biblical conservative. But so the biblical conservative pastors started teaching stuff that's totally not biblical, and he was making videos, very nicely having a problem with it, and then eventually much more assertively having a problem with it, we'll say. And it's as simple as that. That's like his story as he responded to a certain problem that arose in front of him. So then that problem was not the NIFB or something, and that's not really his crowd to be like shepherding about, sounding alarms about and stuff. That's not where he's at.
Right, and on top of that too, I do want to say briefly, it's not related 100% to what you said, but it is a little bit, and it's just something I want to note because you brought up how his tone got a little bit rougher over time. I do want to say, and I'm sure I don't know if we'll get to that portion in the video today or not, but I do want to say that I find it very weak when people criticize AD's tone, especially when you consider like what we've had to deal with in this particular debatosphere with people like Darth Dawkins and Smokey Saint. You know what I mean? And things like that. And when you have somebody like Eric Mason, who's got really, really foul rhetoric, and the man has openly admitted that he struggles with racism, which is fine, by the way. It's not fine. It's not something that I would, criticize you for, if not for the fact that it just bleeds out so many times. In other words, it appears that you're losing the fight.
Well, that, and then you're not the one to be like shepherding on that topic, and you're probably not one to be teaching anything from the Bible at all. Like forgiveness, because that's what it is. in the case of the CRT theory, right? It's unforgiveness for stuff that went on with past generations, even in a lot of cases, is how they see it. Or they, it's like it's an even worse, like not only are they not forgiving, but it's like they're so desperate to not forgive, they'll find any excuse to not forgive, no matter how difficult it is to find an excuse to not forgive. And forgiveness is like the one sin that Jesus straight up says, if you do not forgive the sins of your brother, is that how he words it, brother?
Yeah, it says if you don't forgive the sins of your brother, your heavenly Father will not forgive your sins. To be fair, I do think it's important to note that Jesus does admittedly speak in a hyperbolic sense, right? Like he even outright says that. So it's not like if you don't have, it's not like the Catholic interpretation of like you need to confess every single thing and confess every single deed, right? I know that's not what you're saying. I just want to clarify for the audience because people watch this.
I mean, what's really important to note is that in our belief system, that's like a very extreme thing to say, and he meant to say something very extreme there because it is even more important than other things.
Exactly.
As far as things are not all equally important. It's not like it's either salvific or it's of equal importance below salvific, but it's definitely very important. Forgiveness is, and it's in such defiance of that specific thing. That is a really bad problem. It's not on the regular level of false teaching, even teaching people to be unforgiving. That's especially bad.
Yeah, and I completely agree. It's honestly, Eric Mason is as bad as like the ones that we consider to be like obviously detestable in their teaching. Like, for example, Brendan Robertson, right? Somebody who's just marked by conservatives as like, this is obviously, and even a lot of mainstream Christians, this is obviously somebody we don't fellowship with, right? Eric Mason is that level. And I don't know. You could argue in ways that he's worse. I think Brendan Robertson is quite terrible, but the point being that that should be and to be fair, Eric Mason is not the only false teacher that not implicitly but explicitly Ruslan has said he's cool with. Andy Stanley immediately comes to mind. I think Andy Stanley is a straight up heretic. And I mean, you guys who watch this program know how much I hate the taste of that word. I don't like to call Christians heretics, but I mean, it is detached from the Old Testament and from its laws and from its implications and stuff like that. Like, to teach that as a pastor is like vomit inducing. It's gross. And I mean, I'm like, frankly, heretic is a lot nicer than vomit inducing. So, I'll stick with that, I guess. But the point just being that Ruslan has this problem consistently.
And Andy Stanley says like worse stuff when he gets into the nuances of what he's saying. It's like, oh, it's like as bad as possible. Okay.
Yeah.
And exactly. I always have to learn things twice. So if I had watched this clip twice, I'd probably be able to quote it to you, but I didn't. But anyway.
No, I know exactly what you're talking about because I remember I watched a video and actually it was, if you guys want a little example as to why people are really worried about the influence of Dr. Michael Brown. I used to listen to a lot of Dr. Michael Brown, and I listened to his interview with Andy Stanley, and they were clarifying what Andy Stanley actually meant, right? And if you watch that video, it's kind of bad. It's definitely liberal, but it's not that bad. It's not as bad as people made it out to be. People are slandering this guy for sure. So I think I'm going to go ahead and check him out. And oh my goodness, what is this? No, it's totally what everybody else said. He lied on the Michael Brown interview. That's what happened. And Michael Brown let him get away with it. Right. And the point there just to say is like, Andy Stanley is not just wrong, but he is slippery, snaky, oily. You know what I mean? Like, he knows how to play to a crowd that is not going to appreciate what he's going to say. And he'll say it in a way that is like, oh, it's not that bad.
I want to point out that Michael Brown is just as bad, but he's a bit worse because he doesn't seem as bad. He's a better player. And the thing is that not only letting Andy Stanley get away with that, but he condones Kenneth Copeland and won't say anything against him. And Kenneth Copeland is very obviously demon possessed. Hopefully everyone in the audience knows who I'm talking about, because if you don't know who I'm talking about, you might be like, he's calling someone demon possessed? Come on. No, just check out Kenneth Copeland and then you'll be like, oh, okay. And that's the thing is, when he just doesn't care. So if he just doesn't care, then he's not who he's pretending to be, Michael Brown, you know? So at that point, he is a deceiver, and we need to be shrewd as serpents, you know? We got to stop being played.
Yeah, and let me tell you, the Andy Stanley interview for me was definitely very eye-opening, because there is the fact of the matter is Michael Brown has a lot of really good things that he's done, and because of that, it makes him kind of chameleon on the bad things, and the bad things are really bad. And I mean, listening to him just let Andy Stanley get away with theological murder basically was like really disturbing for me. Once I figured out what Andy Stanley was actually about.
Yeah, and so the advice I'm giving is to for it to not have to come to that point, but to if someone's doing things that they would only do if they're deceptive, then get realistic about the assessment right away. And we got a lot of moving forward to do as the church, because there's been and if we draw the line at false teaching rather than accusing people, then we can really purify the church of false teaching. But that means that we have to come to that agreement about false teaching, which is a whole nother dispute maybe. And that goes with the John Harris video. That's the other approach to this sort of woke topic. So I'm not going to get into it, but I was concise considering I'm talking about the whole other approach, and that's relevant to consider as we watch this too.
And by the way, I mean, we're not going to go on the full laundry list, but just so you guys know, the list is not limited even to Eric Mason and Andy Stanley. There's a long list of people who are very obviously not in the conservative Christian camp by any stretch, who are not even really in a biblically consistent in any way camp. Like I said, I think Andy Stanley and Eric Mason have a detestable doctrine. And Ruslan seems completely and totally naive to that sort of stuff. Now, I will admit I have more sympathy when Ruslan appears naive than when Michael Brown appears naive, because Michael Brown is 60 plus years old and academic and a pastor, and Ruslan appears to be somebody whose rap career ended maybe 2 years ago, if it even ended at all.
I certainly agree with more sympathy for Ruslan, but I still don't have much for him, because I've seen him in discussions. He knows when he's going to be outed as biblical, and he pulls tactics out of the tool belt to deal with everything that comes at him, because he does know the difference between biblical and not biblical enough to use every tactic he can to avoid showing that he's not biblical. So for that reason, I have less sympathy, because he's so skillful with it that he obviously knows all the boundaries.
Well, and there is actually some there is an example of that comes in this video, and I'll have to press play on here so we can get to it, but you guys will absolutely know what I am speaking on here. But let's go ahead and press play. And yeah, I think we just wasted a good 20 minutes, but that's all good. It's not wasted, actually. It was good conversation. I shouldn't say wasted.
The specific niche that you run in, and anything outside that, any injustice that happens outside of your niche of social justice, you don't speak about.
I mean,
it's a great tactic. It's a great tactic to punch up as a YouTuber, to make videos, to do all this kind of stuff. It's a good tactic to build a platform, but is it reflective of a just approach to call out falsehood when you see it?
Ruslan, is your point that I have a channel on social justice, and that means that I'm for other kinds of injustice? Is that your point?
No, I didn't say that. I'm saying I'm saying Proverbs says that false scales are an abomination to God. So if you're going to be the guy that's anti-social justice, be consistent and call out when there is actual injustice happening as well, unless you have an agenda and you're trying to propagate something to force your view on.
Can you pause it momentarily?
This is an impossible standard, because there's an injustice that has happened in the world that
As a matter of debate, Ruslan has no point at all whatsoever here. But as a matter of like the overall discussion to move forward, I think there is a point here. This is something you and I have in common, I think, CJ, that I maybe want to do it much more carefully than you because I'm aware of a lot of like the traps that are laid before us, you know. But we want to address these problems without any racist or CRT assumptions or whatever, but with honesty about history and honesty about what's happened, and then moving forward in a way that's just, but functional for all, you know, that, you know, to do the teamwork. We're in an age where we have all this communication. It is time to do the teamwork, and it's time to take over the social justice thing, call it true justice, a deliberate contrast, and let's actually do it. Like, let's not ignore it, you know? So in that sense, I think Ruslan has a point about like, if you're calling out the social justice thing and you want to compete, then you do have to actually expand into the other stuff in the overall battle, you know?
Yeah, and I do, you know, I have sympathy for both sides in that regard, because on one end, I don't think there's any problem with, you know, like I said earlier, you know, you have your flavor, if you will, right? There's nothing wrong with that, I think. Obviously, it depends on what exactly you're doing, but in the case of like,
well, yeah, in the interest of saving time, let's call it like one body, many members. So it's like, as the body, we got to be complete, but we don't have to put it on AD as one member. But, you know, that's sort of what's going on right now with us reviewing their discussion, with the fact that they had their discussion, you know? One body, many members. Oh, brother, did we lose you? Okay, well, I'll make sure he knows he's lost. Which, unfortunately, I cannot press the play button for y'all. I would like to do that. Okay. I'm telling him he dropped by text message. Because for all I know where he is at. Hello, are you back?
can you hear me at the moment?
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay. I'm on my phone right now. I can't share the video. It doesn't look
Oh,
like,
I can.
know how. But my Wi-Fi will turn back on in just a second, so we can just conversate for the next 3 to 5 minutes. While
Wait, you heard me, right? I can share the video.
Oh, okay. Fantastic. Do you know where exactly we're at?
Not like perfectly exactly. It does take a moment to, you know, get situated. But I think we were at approximately maybe minute 17-ish. So that might be a good place for me to start tracking it down. I think this is...
Well, no, I think we're closer to, because remember, we started cutting off like 15 minutes of it. So I think we're like at 30 minutes, 32 minutes.
Oh, did you? Okay, maybe I didn't see. So here's 32 minutes, 44 seconds. Let me share it there, and we can team up on finding the exact place to start.
Let's see.
There it is.
Add to stream. Appreciate you helping me out with this.
Oh yeah, you're welcome. You know, that's one thing that's good about an open mic show is this isn't something that only I can do. Not everyone can do it, but a lot of people can if they're in the open mic with you. So, okay, should I play it? And yeah, you can start telling me where to go from here.
And then you went to what you call the homophobic statement, which I don't understand how it's homophobic, but that's a side issue.
We're a little bit farther than this.
I'd be glad to call out a racist path.
What?
We're a little bit farther than this, because this is him talking about the racist pastors and
in the Christian church, which is what my channel is about. It's about racism in the Christian church, the social justice movement in the Christian church.
Well, this seems close enough to me. What do you think?
Yeah, it is.
If they're worth it,
we'll just let it play through.
Things like that, I would call them out. So I don't know what the point is, but yeah, my channel isn't an all
it's not a
topics
biblical
channel.
justice channel. It's a channel to dunk on social justice warriors. Yeah.
Oh, I think I had something weird going on my end. How have things been going?
Say that one more time.
I said I think I was doing something weird on my end. How have things been going? Fine.
Yeah, everything's coming through on my end perfectly.
Okay, cool. I'll just start it back up again then. Sorry.
You're good.
Right.
Well, that's a big
if
part of my
something is
channel. Yeah.
If something is a falsehood, do we not have a responsibility to call it out? If this is now in the realm of your niche, is you primarily do social justice stuff. You dunk on the
Social justice. That's my channel.
So what I'm saying is, when something comes out that's incongruent with that, when something comes out that's inconsistent with that, do you have zero responsibility to make any kind of course corrections?
What? Give me an example.
Here's an example. The Vody controversy that just came out. Okay.
What's the Vody controversy?
Okay, so you don't know. That's what I'm saying. Let me.
How can I, Ruslan? How can I comment on something that I don't know?
80, because this is your wheelhouse, my brother. You live in the wheelhouse of dunking on a social justice warrior. One of the faces who created a lot of the straw man arguments against the social justice warrior has just came out to the point where Neil, the other guy, is saying he looks like he plagiarized a lot of stuff from
Neil?
this book. You don't know who Neil Shinvi is? It's interesting because you have a whole
Neil
video about
Shinvi.
Neil Shinvi.
Okay, I should just very briefly address this because I know what happened. And John Harris covered this quote controversy in detail. And what it is there's someone that Vody Bachim, I think is how it's pronounced.
Yes, sir.
He worked with a certain man a lot, probably over the phone a lot and stuff, and cited him a number of times. And there's one time where it appears that something that this man said was put into the text and the citation was missed. And then there's like one other case of something like that. So it's just imperfections in the edit. It's not that he's been exposed as a plagiarizer like some people have been. So, yeah, it's literally just they're desperate to make a scandal where there's not. And it's just it's the kind of thing where when you make the next edition, you fix it, you know?
Yeah, and it's not the first time, too. You know, there is another, I'll be brief, but there is another one of these controversies where Eric Mason and James White went back and forth with each other because James White has a almost redundantly biblical view of, and I say that in the positive sense, right? In the sense that he is just completely and totally thorough, even to the point of redundancy when it comes to his view on race biblically, which makes it fantastic to listen to. He's a fantastic person to refute people like Eric Mason. And Ruslan, you know, did this whole thing talking about how basically he thought that James White was out of line and that Eric Mason was not out of line for saying that James White is an implicit white supremacist. That to me kind of seems like exactly what you're saying AD should do, which he's not doing, right? In other words, jumping on this bandwagon and going after someone. In other words, it's like Ruslan's trying to pass on his mistake to AD and have him like partake in it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and well, Ruslan also like he'll jump on board whatever the party line is, and then he's discovering that the party line is being deceptive, and so then it's making a fool out of him because he's passing on their deception. And it's like, you know, I've been new to this and like, but now I've been at it for like a year and a half, you know, and I've learned to like check my sources or use my words differently when I've checked my sources than when I haven't, kind of a thing, you know what I mean? And Ruslan just plays totally fast and loose, and he can't trust the people that he's relying on as he does it.
Jamie says to turn up my mic a little bit. This is as far as it goes up. As soon as my Wi-Fi turns back on, I'll be switching back to my computer, and then everything will be clear again. And that should be literally any second now.
And I can back up from my mic some so that I sound more similar to him. than I am at full volume anyway. And should we get the video going back again?
Yes, sir. Real quick, though, I do just want to say Kelvy Quayo says that you have a accent that sounds Iranian. That's funny.
Oh, yeah. For the sake of time, I wasn't going to address it, but now I will. I think it's just that we have all this smoke here in California right now, and so I'm nasally, and so I'm talking different than usual. Like, yeah.
Yeah, I just thought that was funny. But anyways, let's get back into the video.
Okay.
Yeah, I know who Neil Shenvi is.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Neil Shenvi just came out and agreed that the guy who wrote Fault Lines, Vody, has misspoken, misattributed quotes, and plagiarized. This is
Oh, did you hear Ruslan there? He slipped in. I was going to pause it anyway because, Neil Shenvi and Vody Bakum have already hashed this out. So Vody Bakum admits that they were mistakes. And the way Neil Shenvi worded it, from what I heard, was not problematic. It was other people who wanted to make it a problem. But we just heard Ruslan even say misspoke, and then Ruslan's like, that's not very effective. So he changed it to misquoted and plagiarized. But really, misspoke is a fair characterization. He was right the first time.
This is on Twitter. This is public information. Everybody's talking about it. You don't have.
I was just saying it's likely what I don't know. I'm not familiar with the name that you guys were given, but it's likely what he was even saying too, especially if they've already hashed it out with each other.
Well, Neil Shenvi is he's the middleman between the woke and the conservative Christians, and he's like uber academic, and I don't know what to make of him or his role, because the church he attends is J.D. Greer's church, and J.D. Greer is the one who was replaced with Ed Litton. And so, but I'm not just as simple as guilt by association, you know? It's more like if there's specifically a reason that you know to disassociate and you don't, then that's the issue. So I don't know. That's all. Yeah, there's a whole can of worms there I didn't mean to start getting into.
Oh, you're fine. I'll save any commentary I have just so we can get through more of the video.
But it is good to note that, yeah, the whole thing with Vody Bakum is just an editorial error, a couple of them that exist in a book, because it's not perfectly edited.
Right.
I don't have a Twitter
to
account.
coast correct. You don't. I don't.
No.
Okay, well, you don't have a Twitter. This is everywhere. Everyone's talking about. Okay, maybe it's not everywhere. I'm being hyperbolic.
Ruslan, let me just say this to you.
No, let me
This is the first time I've heard of this.
Okay, so you're gonna make a video about it. Are you gonna make a video about it?
I have to. Well, I'll make a video about it if it's worthy of a
As long
video.
as you make a video about it and you hold people to the same scales of plagiarism, of misquoting things, of creating straw mans and adding words to stuff that's not true. As long as you do that, bro, respect. As long as you're consistent, respect.
If Vody Bakum was plagiarizing people, absolutely.
Okay.
But
he
the thing
plagiarized
is,
an atheist. It's pretty much confirmed by multiple sources, including Neil Shenvi. You guys can go on Twitter, look at it up.
Okay. All right. You heard it here first. Ruslan says that Vody Bakum plagiarized an atheist. Which atheist?
You want me to pull up the whole article right now?
Well, I don't know. I mean, you seem to know a lot about this. I know nothing about this.
Okay. So what I'm saying is, how about you educate yourself, do a little bit of research, and then you can know too.
I will. You know, like how so like he. Sorry, can you pause it? I should ask you to pause it before.
Yeah, I wanted to also because like AD, like he figures he can just let Ruslan speak and it'll sort itself out over time, whatever's going on, you know. So he's not concerned. And that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, I mean, and I thought that that was like. Ruslan is kind of, he can get a little childish sometimes, you know what I mean? Like when he just throws like these little like underhanded jabs at AD, you know what I'm saying? And it's like, come on, dude, we're not grade schoolers. Like, can we just have a conversation, you know what I'm saying? Well, maybe you should educate yourself, you know what I mean? That's basically, you just gave me the Christian YouTubers equivalent of the Google it meme. Bro, like, you know what I mean? I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway,
and I don't think he quite gets what goes on, like, amongst those who really want to be submitted to Christ, is that Then we come together with others who really want to be submitted to Christ, and we bring each other useful information and stuff, and together as a body, we sort things out. And so it's like, it's just going to sort itself out with time, you know? And that's where AD's at. He's just kind of laughing it off.
Yeah, I do love how he just basically like thinks of it almost as a joke because the thing is it is right. It's nothing more than I don't know. It's like accusing without accusing. You know what I mean?
And these sorts of things are common woke tactics. So it seemed like distractions. They're sort of not, because that is the point of AD having this discussion with Ruslan, is to help us better handle these discussions with the woke folk, so that you know, if they're whatever sheep are among them, we can bring them to a safe pasture. You know, call them over.
Absolutely.
Put up for you. I can pull it up for you.
Hey, Ruslan, I have a question for you.
What's your question, boss?
Do you do a video every single time that an injustice happens?
If we're talking injustices connected to what our niches are, right? So let's just say,
what's your niche? Let's talk about
faith related things, right?
Okay.
Faith related things, and something is touching on a faith related thing. So let's just come out and let's just say LeBron James comes out and says something crazy about white Jesus and all white people and white Jesus. Yes, I would do a video about that. And,
right.
And I have done videos when LeBron James has misspoken about stuff and has been out of pocket.
I can guarantee you that I would love to dunk on LeBron James saying something stupid. However, I'd never even heard of that. So the thing is, I'm not out there hunting. This is the thing. Like, you think I'm out there hunting things to find about people? I don't. If I don't know about it, how can I do a video about it?
I just want to vouch for AD here. There's a reason I described it as like he saw what he considered conservative teachers. It's like starting to teach false doctrine. So he did YouTube videos confronting it, and he just kind of found himself in the situation from all that. And yeah, he doesn't go around looking for things. He's a businessman. He doesn't really put a lot of time into his stuff. He's been a pastor before of a small church, and he's biblical, and that's like his qualifications, you know. And what comes up in the church that the church is dealing with, he like, we can hear like a lot of tapping and stuff going on.
Sorry.
But yeah, whatever the church is dealing with, you know, he's been very helpful to me in thinking through this stuff so that I can progress to a better and better place, you know, which is where I'm here. I'm talking to CJ about things like compassion. I haven't used that word yet today because we've been trying to like not slow it down too much, but I'm like, we need to focus on that approach more. You know, we've always had that motive, but yeah.
What a weird standard, Ruslan.
Yeah, and
this
is a point where I want to note really quickly, because there's going to be a couple future, I don't know how far in the future it's going to happen, but there's going to be a couple future Ruslan response videos as well. He just did a video recently titled "Why I'm So Hard on Conservatives," and to make a long story short with it, while I certainly have seen Ruslan have some equal scales occasionally, in the sense that like he's called out Nick Cannon for some of the nonsense that he's done and stuff like that. I mean, I think that, you know, you have a little bit of admission even from him that he is very one-sided in this video. I think that's important. But nonetheless, my internet is actually just about to come back on, so I'm going to not talk here for just a couple of seconds, hopefully, minutes potentially, and get everything set back up.
The weird standard.
How do you come up with your videos? I'm just curious.
I mean, I have a list going, so whenever I run out of time, I got a list. But if people bring things to my attention and other things I don't, I'm not spending tons of time researching. I respect you, Ruslan. That's why I have notes in front of me. Normally, I don't even have any notes in front of me. So this is the thing, like, Ruslan, I don't know what kind of point you're trying to score here, but it's like, yeah, I don't do videos on everything. I mean, I guess that's bad on me.
Audio on video.
If you have a specific, I've already explained it. You want me to explain it a different way, or
no? That's okay.
You want to move on? I think
What was that, brother? Yeah, I'll just play the video.
Just a moment. I'm just having some problems, but hang on. I'm just.
I think I made a pretty clear point. If your thing is to dunk on this, something that's incongruent with, if we're going to talk about my plat video, right? You provided some information, and I course corrected it, and I said, hey, it appears at this timestamp that he was a member of the SBC. I corrected that, even though it wasn't in the interest of what I was saying. Right. So I'm saying there's just scales there. I'm saying I don't see that from you, AD. I see a one-sided, let me find the easiest stuff to dunk on and then consistently just bag on the same thing over and over again.
How many of my videos have you seen, do you think?
Well, I didn't watch all 12 you've made on me. So kudos to you. That's a lot of time, man. I don't know how you're able to to pump so much content out. So I didn't watch all 12 that you made on me. I watched a couple of those. I watched your Phil Vischer video. I'd say I've scrolled through your feed. Like I've scrolled through your entire feed and watched, looked at like all the topics you cover. I say I probably watched maybe a dozen or so. How many videos of mine have you watched?
3.
Okay. So I watched more of your content than you have of my content. Is that
yeah.
Correct? Okay.
Yeah, probably. If you watched 12, then yes.
Cool. So if you've only watched 3 of my videos, why is there what appears to be this consistent like attack and what I would say is a misrepresentation of what it is that I actually believe? So whether it's you've called me woke, you've called me leftist, you call me a woke church avatar, which is good. You've called me a leftist. You've watched 3 videos.
I think it was a liberal. I don't typically use the word leftist. It must have been liberal.
You've called me a liberal. You've called me woke avatar. What are some other things you've called me?
I don't remember.
You don't remember? Okay, so you just say a lot.
There's a lot though. There's a lot.
Okay, there's a lot of stuff you said. Okay, respect. So you've created attacks about me.
Sure.
Having watched 3 videos.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Mostly I got that from the Marcus video too. All that stuff.
Okay. Right. Yeah. So you watched 3 videos.
Yeah, that's right.
And you think the way specifically you've spoken about me, a fellow brother in Christ, or at least I think you think I'm saved, right?
I mean, I listen. I have no knowledge that would say that you would not be saved.
Okay.
You're baptized, right?
Yeah.
You're a member of a church.
Yes. Yes, I've been a member of the same church. It's just funny. Yes, I've baptized, been a member of the same church for a while. Yep.
Okay, so I'll treat you with the respect a brother deserves. Yeah.
Okay, so if I'm saved and I'm a brother in the faith, right? Why would you then make 12 videos about me, repeatedly miscategorizing me and name calling?
Well, I don't know what making 12.
I want to just let everybody know. Perk your ears for a moment, because I have been hinting to a lot of what is about to come up in this video so far. So when I'm talking about some of the things where it's like there was some pretty obvious liberalism, which Ruslan does not own the title liberal, but I think he should, because it accurately describes him, or at least progressive. But nonetheless, just perk your ears. That's my point. We can go ahead and press play again.
Okay, one moment. I don't know if I'm on mute. Okay, and then okay.
Well, videos has to do with it.
Call me a liberal. Call me a liberal. Call me a woke avatar.
Sure.
Calling me B-Rabbit. I think Malibu's Most Wanted is a much better joke. Calling me B-Rabbit and miscategorizing my actual positions, right?
Well,
like
because I don't.
Oh, and well, let's leave mine up in case your internet drops. But my internet's not behaving the best either. But if I drop, you're good. So we'll keep it this way.
For sure.
I don't think it is a miscategorizing. That's why.
You don't think it's a miscategorization, but if you think if you would have thought that and had the courtesy to reach out or watch more of my content, you would know that I'm actually not a liberal. I'm not a socialist. I'm not a woke avatar. Had you actually sat with more of my content.
Why would you say you're not a liberal?
Why would I say I'm not? Because if you go down to policies, we go over policies. I'm substantially more conservative.
Oh, I see. I see this the problem here. So yeah, I'm not even talking about politics. I'm talking about theologically.
Okay, so how do you think I'm a liberal theologically?
Right, because
if I hold to a biblical sex ethic, I hold to a conservative view of scripture. I hold to a conservative. You must join the local church. You should be baptized. Salvation by grace through faith. These are all conservative theological positions. How in the world am I a liberal or a progressive Christian?
Right, because in the things that you would call non-essentials, you tend to fall on the liberal.
I'm curious to know whether or not all of those things are 100% true. Now, some of them I'm sure I can just take at face value, but really the one I'm curious about is he says he takes I don't know what word he used, orthodox maybe, view of scripture, conservative view of scripture might have been what he said, but I'd be interested to see that, because Randall Rouser and Paul Copan both believe that they take a conservative view of scripture, and they absolutely do not. So I'd be interested to know what exactly Ruslan means by that.
Yeah, that's where everything else falls into, And that's the thing about this word essentials, like what essentials as in you can believe that and possibly be saved, or essentials as in we're not ordered to church discipline you according to the Bible because it's not essential enough to discipline over according to the Bible? Like, what do you even mean by essentials when you say it? But I think you're right. It's disagreeing with the Bible, and then at that point, you're vilifying God's teaching, and that's exactly what it's talking about in 1 Timothy chapter 6, when it says, if anyone teaches otherwise, well, first it says, let no one teach otherwise, that they not blaspheme God's teaching. And that's specifically regarding slaves counting their masters worthy of all honor. So it speaks to the woke topic very directly.
Well, and even just like a strictly academic sense, I would be really curious to ask Ruslan, hey, when were the Gospels written? Also, by who? Also, who wrote the Torah? Also, is Joshua hyperbolized, or did they actually have that brutal of a conquest? What's up with the flood narrative? Global, not global? What say you? You know what I mean? Like he says he takes a conservative view of Scripture. I'm just curious. I'm not saying necessarily that he answers in the liberal way and all those views. I really don't know. But I kind of have an inkling that he probably wouldn't. Like, he might think Moses existed and that there was a literal Exodus. But does he think Moses wrote Exodus, or at least the core nucleus of Exodus? I imagine probably not. I don't know that for sure, but I don't know. I'd be interested.
Well, and that is sort of the catch-all category when you're like the essentials and orthodox with Scripture, that is the catch-all category that we got to pay close attention to. I think you're right to take note of that.
Yeah, and it is, because let me be clear. You guys know what I mean when I say essentials, right? What I'm saying essentials is, are you or are you not a Christian? And also the way I use heretic is the reverse of that, right? Are you or are you not a Christian? Calling heretics. If I call you a heretic, it's because I believe you're not a Christian, right? A lot of people will use heretic just to describe somebody, like Kent Hovind will say OEC are saved, but he thinks they're heretics. I know that's an accurate use of the word. I don't think it's very colloquial or contemporarily accurate, rather. But that's not the way that I personally use the word. So, right. So you guys know where I'm coming from with this. I think that when it comes to like an Orthodox view of Scripture, like that has to be an essential, because, and I've even struggled with this a lot too. Like, at what point do I draw the line on this? Like, is old earth saved? I think you can be old earth and saved, but if you're going to start questioning things like, for example, Randall Rouser, who I think is a very nice and sweet and lovely gentleman, by the way, but he'll say things like, he doesn't believe that when a verse is, contrary to our moral intuitions, he doesn't believe that verse is necessarily divinely dictated or inspired.
Oh, yeah. So he's clearly just putting himself in the place of God there.
Exactly.
May I ask you, brother, do you think there's a specific standard that the Bible is teaching us to hold, which is probably most clearly honed in on in the New Testament, maybe? Or maybe without that New Testament part, but do you think there's a specific standard that the Bible is calling us to that we should be working together to be in submission and conformity to that standard?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I also think that things that are non-essential can become essential for individuals, even though I think only God knows when that is the case. But I think there are people who exist who probably have taken a non-essential issue and just refused Scripture, believers, the Holy Spirit, trying to change their mind to conform to the mind of Christ, to a point where God is potentially, not operating actively in their lives anymore. I don't think there's any way for us to know who that is, much the same way I don't think there's any way for us to know who the reprobate is. But I do absolutely agree that it's like, there is like limits between, what is being genuinely confused and what is being dishonest and unwilling to change.
Yeah, and we if I may say, we have a lot of moving forward to do in this whole discussion of that whole topic. So well, we should save most of it for another time.
That's probably true because there's a lot of different ways that could go. But the point is just to say, as far as like when it comes to things like, when you're taking a Paul Copan or a Randall Rouser or an Andy Stanley or anybody who's going to take those kinds of views of scripture, right? I can have lots of respect for them as individuals in the sense that, like, I think they're good people. They're nice to talk to. They're sweet and kind, all that kind of stuff, right? But like, as far as their theology and no, that's absolutely an essential. I could not possibly sit under Randall Rouser's preaching. I just wouldn't do it. Or Paul Copan's or Andy Stanley's.
And the church agrees about that, and the church needs to be better about expressing the agreement that the true church has in Christ. When it is very clear, let's start at like being better about saying, yeah, we do agree. We're not wishy-washy on this. There is one consensus. And then that consensus might expand once we, step into all that.
Yeah, absolutely. Jill says Paul Copan is the man. I sincerely and severely disagree, Jill, and I certainly hope that you are open to changing your mind on that, because I think Paul Copan absolutely perverts these scriptures. I don't think he does it intentionally, or at least, well, that's even a nuance in and of itself. I can't get into too much of it because it's going to distract from this video. But the point is, Copan literally says that the Book of Joshua and books like it are Israelite nationalistic war propaganda. So, I mean, I don't know how you can possibly consider that to be Christian teaching, but perhaps we should just have a conversation, the two of us, with that, because that'll distract from this. But let's go on and continue.
Side of many of them.
I tend to, what? Give me an example.
Like female elders, for example.
I don't believe in female elders.
So, okay, so let me ask you this.
So you're wrong. I don't believe in female elders. Our church doesn't have female elders.
Okay, so maybe I should have said, so what do you believe, like a woman should preach or exercise authority over a man?
No, I don't believe a woman should exercise authority over a man.
Okay, got it. So I was misinformed about that.
So to be clear, our church does not have female elders.
Pause real quick.
I don't think a woman can hold the position of an elder in a church.
There was, did you guys notice what Ruslan said there?
Well, he'll point it out eventually.
Well, and that is true. I guess he does. So I am remembering that. But now that we have it paused, though, I do just want to let the audience know. AD asked, do you believe that a woman can exercise authority or preach? Right? He actually said it in reverse order, but both of those things. And Ruslan said, I don't believe that women can exercise authority over men. Okay, there's a missing element there.
Let's be a tiny bit more exact, because he said no. So he gave like the clear answer. And then he also added the specificity of, I don't believe a woman should have authority over a man.
Yeah, and it's like, and
because it's a lot different if you don't say no first. If you only say the one thing, you're specifying. But once you say no, you kind of blanket answer the question,
Exactly, like you imply that you're being that you're answering both of the questions, basically.
Yeah.
And yeah, see, that's not that, like that's shady. That's kind of sleazy. You know what I mean? That's slippery. Weaselly is what AD says. Frankly, and this is one where I would absolutely disagree with Ruslan, but frankly, again, this is just one of those things where it's like, dude, just tell me what it is that you believe, right? I'll tell you what I believe. I do not believe women can be preaching on a Sunday. I do not believe that women can be having any level of church authority over grown men. I think they can teach children, like Sunday school. And the deacon question is interesting to me because the word deacon doesn't appear to mean the same thing in the Bible as it does today. So when they say there's female deacons, I don't know if that actually means what we mean by female deacons. But I admit that there's definitely room for nuance, right? It's not like women need to just shut up and do what you're told, right? That's not what we're saying. But when it comes to that position of the shepherd of the flock, the Bible's quite clear. No. And not an underling shepherd of the flock either. The answer is no.
Hosting, it would have been standard for women to do hosting tasks. And so then it's no surprise that some women who owned homes churches were held in their homes because women were prone to hosting the guests, including the teachers and the pastors,
Mm-hmm. Well, and I will say, I wouldn't personally, I wouldn't like, well, how am I trying to word this? If a church decided to have deaconesses, I would not consider that to be a line in the sand, so long as they were very clear about, hey, we believe that on account with people like Phoebe and stuff like that, that it is okay for women to be deaconesses, but not to hold the positions of pastor.
Let's just say like this is for everyone who's like teaching falsely and then just teaching anyway. Like, it's a major responsibility, and there's a lot of men not taking it seriously. And I just want to say that that's equally disqualifying, Let's not make it so easy with the one, but then we always make it so difficult with the other one, And that's actually where we have so much going wrong, is that the wrong men, the men who are most appeasing to people in numbers are the ones in the teaching roles instead of the ones who are teaching the Bible most biblically,
Yeah, and I do want to point out too, just briefly, right? Because a lot of people will say, "Oh, so these guys are just basically admitting that the Bible is sexist." No, absolutely not. The Bible is certainly patriarchal, but that a patriarchy is a good thing when done properly. In fact, it's the way the species is designed to operate. I think that's very obvious. But further, can we just be honest? Like, it's literally one, I guess you could say two, because teaching men, but it's two then tasks in the church that are not for women. Two. That's it. Like, not being a pastor, which is obviously, if the head of the house is supposed to be the man, then obviously the head of the spiritual house should be a man. I think that makes sense, right? And again, we are a patriarchal species naturally. And teaching doctrine to grown men. It's not saying anything about like a missionary or potentially somebody who's going out teaching children, like I said, on Sunday school, somebody like the Transformed Wife who has a women's ministry that is specifically speaking to women in like Bible study type ways, right? Doesn't say anything about that. It's a very specific thing. So like, I don't even understand why people make a big deal out of it in the first place. It's like, it's one.
Well, I might dispute that that they're allowed to do other teaching, because I think maybe that spot has been translated for political correctness. When I looked at the Greek, I was kind of surprised what the word appears to be anyway. I'm not a Greek expert, so I can only go on my research, but yeah. So that would be another topic for another time. But I think, like, it's racist to say that race is relevant to social matters and stuff. And in that sense, it's sexist to say that sex matters to social matters and stuff like that. And so in that sense, the Bible is sexist, because like that actually is a relevant distinction between humans, male and female. So it's right to treat it as a relevant distinction. And that's just a very different thing than race. Race is not a relevant distinction like that. It doesn't like we don't it's not right to apply that socially or anything.
Yeah, and it's one of those things too where it's like, there are certainly like examples of where race becomes real, right? They call that race realism, but race realism technically means a lot more than actually just what I'm about to say. But like, so for example, like African Americans and people from Africa also will tend to be like a little bit more athletic or something like that. And so it's not even like distinctions aren't even, relevant in that regard, but it's obviously not the same, right? Because distinctions in regards to like men and women is like, we have completely different brains, our brain chemistry, our body chemistry, the way that we treat our fellow human beings, it's completely different. Our flaws are often completely different. Now, obviously, do these things overlap? Of course they do. Both men and women are ambitious to a fault, but men are ambitious to the point of Alexander the Great and Genghis Khan and Julius Caesar and etc. There's not very many women who did that because there's not very many women who cared, right? It's likewise, when you have like extreme manipulation, people have long said for a long period of time that's a particularly female quality, right? That doesn't mean that men aren't manipulative, but you guys get the idea. Right. There's very genuine distinctions between men and women. And the Bible obviously recognizes that as, of course, being, the God is the creator of that. He's the one who established that in the first place. And just like it is not for a man to birth a child or to give a child suck, it is also not for a woman to be the head and leader of the household or of the spiritual house. It's just the way the species is designed. And if you ever have somebody who has a question about this, you can give them two really good examples to prove the point. Example number one, if they're a man, would you hit a woman? Like, not just they're attacking you or anything like that, just like the same way you would hit a guy, like getting a boxing match, for example. Would you do it? Chances are you got like a 90% chance, even if they're woke, that they're going to answer that question no. Why? Because you know that as a man, you don't do that. That's a patriarchal statement right there. You are saying I, as the stronger of the two sexes here, should withhold my aggression, withhold my strength in this situation, and not cause any damage to this person that could be significantly greater than the damage they could cause to me, right? Second thing you can ask, and this will be for the women. Quick question. You're out with your boyfriend and fire breaks out in the middle of the movie theater. Where are you looking? Chances are you got about 90% chance, once again, even if they're woke, that they're looking right over to their left or right to their boyfriend so that he can try and get them out of here, right? Because she knows that she's supposed to rely on him for protection, right? In other words, even these woke people who pretend that they don't want to live patriarchally know for a fact that patriarchy is true.
Well, right? It's like when they depend on the cops to defend them as they're protesting to abolish the cops.
Yeah, exactly. That's a perfect example. That is 100% perfect example. And I'll end it with this. I know absolutely that there are men out there who have abused patriarchy to turn it into something that is keeping women down. But biblical patriarchy is still equality between the sexes. But equality is in your personhood and in your value as a human being. It is not necessarily positional. I am not equal in the ability to birth children to a woman, period. And that's just the way it is. And
I think the equality taught in the Bible is it's a bit different because when he's talking to the disciples, he tells them he's going to give them thrones. And then they their mother asks for them to be on the left and the right. And there's an insinuation about the cross there where he's like, you cannot bear to be there. It's for who my father has given it, But then he also tells them, look, like it won't be like it is with the leaders, the kings and powers of this world that take advantage, but rather whoever is highest must be the servant. And so what it is, with the first are last and the last are first, Jesus is both the servantiest servant of all and the kingiest king of all. So he is the ultimate first and the ultimate last. Oh, and that goes with that language too. I didn't notice that before. And then the rest of us fall somewhere like in the middle somewhere, kind of a thing. So the disciples get, the 12 apostles get their 12 thrones, but they're also, what correlates with that is being super subservient also. They go together. So it's something much more beautiful and epic than some stupid Marxist equality, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the equality in the sense that a lot of people mean it today is just not possible. But equality in the sense that, and I do think the Bible teaches, equality in personhood, certainly. And that's what people really want when they're talking about equality, is that we are all valued individually as equal humans, right? And I think that the Bible does absolutely teach that. but there's no reason for us to go, any farther than that. As far as the equality is concerned, because when you do get farther than that, you start to you're no longer actually being equal. I mean, the fact of the matter is, if you tried to make me right now equal in every way to Donald Trump, you would be, first off, being incredibly cruel to Donald Trump, because he has actually achieved a lot and deserves the things that he has achieved. But furthermore, you also wouldn't actually be being equal. You have to do a lot of work and give me a whole lot of benefit. And on the flip side, you have to do the exact opposite to Trump. You have to give him a lot of disbenefit, if that's actually a word. But, so it's like your attempts to get equality ends up just creating inequality anyways.
Well, there's so much wrong with like the Marxist equality idea. That would have to be a whole show in itself. Because here's a super quick example, is just like, if everyone is equal, then no one has like the next luxury of the future kind of a thing. There's no market for it or anything. So maybe some institutions like funnel money into something like that, and they sort of fake it, but it's just not the same as necessity being the actual mother of invention, So since there's no inequality, there's no one to be ahead of the curve for future people to eventually have those be their norms, with advancing technology specifically is easy. But then also us as the church, if we can live better, maybe if we benefit enough from it, our norms will be other people's norms, and the rain will fall on the just and the unjust alike. And when that happens, we got to remember to give Jesus the credit for it. Don't let them like not hear the witness of God for what it is. He is worthy.
And real quick, I do want to say, so we just hit the 2 hour and 5 minute mark. We're going to go 2 hours and 30. So we got about 25 minutes left that we're going to continue on with this, but just want to let you guys know that, so that we'll start the wind down, I guess. But we obviously, 25 minutes is plenty of time to get some more good commentary in and some more of the video also, but just want to let everybody know.
A woman can hold the position of a senior pastor of a church. So you were wrong about something because you hadn't sat and actually asked me or did the research. Not saying you have to ask me about every single theological position, but this is where I think charity is extended, right? Like, sure. I see misrepresentation on your channel. I reach out to you and I left a comment right away. Hey man, when you said this and this and this wasn't really indicative. The whole sushi bit, when I said, because I didn't watch it all of it, but you said Ruslan thought UBI was a bad idea because he couldn't get sushi. No, that's actually not what I said at all. I used a real life illustration. And then I said sushi. Oh, right. So you're creating these falsehoods, and it's fine and it's be rapid, but I wouldn't do that to you. That's what I'm saying.
I mean, it was like paraphrasing Ruslan's point, and then it's like as if being able to get sushi is relevant. So I don't know. I mean, I get what Ruslan's saying, but at the same time, it's like it's not like 80s characterization was unfair. Just as someone who saw the video. I didn't research it, so I can't really relay it to you in detail, but just my commentary.
Like if I came on here and I started name calling you, I started saying you look like a tall hobbit, and your definition of Schmeagol from the Hobbit, and I started doing all these things, it wouldn't be fair. And then I called you my favorite anti-racist, right? It wouldn't be fair to say those things to you because they wouldn't represent you. If I said you were a covert white supremacist, it wouldn't represent you. You're a Puerto Rican man. You have dignity. I think you're a brother in the faith. I wouldn't make a video like that about you. How is that charitable? How is that not slander, my friend?
Right. So okay. So I apologize for being mistaken about your beliefs on female elders. I watched a video that you did with Julie something or other Schaefer.
Who's not an elder at our church.
Well, I didn't say she was, but in that video,
how'd you watch the video? How'd you got to the end of the video? We talked about we don't believe senior pastors and we don't believe women could be elders in the church. At our church, we believe that. You see what I'm saying? How'd you finish the video?
Hold on. So do you believe that women can be pastors?
I believe women can preach. I think that title of pastor is going to go down to the semantics. So I view the position of pastor as the word elder, right? Like I take a more reformed position on that, right?
Sure.
Elder, pastor, interchangeable. There's certain people that have youth pastors that aren't elders, right? Certain churches, certain camps. So they can have pastors that aren't elders. So I think it comes down to the definition. I would say in my case, based on the elder pastor wordage, I would say no, a woman cannot be an elder, overseer, pastor based on that word. If we're talking about a woman youth pastor, a woman's worship pastor, that's a different definition.
Ruslan, you just got done saying to me that you don't believe that women should teach or exercise authority over a man. And then you hold on.
Authority. I did not say women can't teach. I never said that. I said a woman can't. I said do not exercise authority over a man. I think a woman can teach and not exercise. I think a woman could write a book. I think a woman could lead worship. I think a woman could do announcements. I think that doesn't mean she's exercising authority over a man.
I asked you if a woman could teach or exercise authority over a man. Mm-hmm. You said no.
I said she cannot exercise authority over a man. That was my word.
Okay. Got it. So
Stop.
Okay. So the point is, I
wanted to allow that some time so that you guys could get the full context and fruition. That was kind of shady, right? Like, that was kind of shady. You just had, okay, so, and he kept throwing in that word, senior, right? So it was almost like he was hinting towards, all right, what I'm saying isn't the same thing as what you're saying, AD. And AD, he picked up on it, and he's like, okay, well, do you think they can be pastors? Purposefully dropping senior and emphasizing the word pastor. Do you think they can preach? And Ruslan says, well, maybe it depends on the context, I guess. And he goes back to saying, exactly what me and Nicholas were just talking about earlier, about how you just told me that you agreed with this Bible verse. Ruslan clarifies, no, I only agreed with they can't have authority over a man. And AD focuses on that same thing that me and Nicholas were just talking about. Well, that initial no you gave kind of implied that you agreed with the whole thing I was saying. It's kind of shady, right? And it does actually get worse. Unless you want to comment, Brother Nicholas, let's go ahead and see how it gets worse.
A woman could teach. Hold on, stop. I didn't. See now you're playing a word game here.
You didn't.
So I asked you
on your Marcus Pittman video. You've historically misrepresented me and you've slandered me.
No, I have not.
Yes, you have.
So here's the reality.
If I'm giving you a position and I'm saying this is my position, ask me what I think about the position, and you're now changing it and you're creating a straw man and you're name calling and you're giving me labels that I don't identify with. How is that not misrepresentation and slander, AD?
For name calling you?
For name calling me and calling me labels that I don't identify as a liberal. I
didn't say you identified as a liberal. That would be slander. I said you are a liberal. I didn't say you identified as a liberal.
I'm saying AD, I'm not. That's a misrepresentation.
Right.
Just like you're not a white supremacist. Right. And even if I would say you had I would never say you had white supremacy tendencies or you were a covert white supremacist. You probably would say I have covert Marxist tendencies or some nonsense.
I didn't say that.
Okay.
But
I'm saying you would.
But
because Marcus Pittman did. And you agree with Marcus Pittman. Right.
No, in fact, in the video, I said that I wouldn't have gone down the Marxist road with you.
Okay.
But you definitely believe some things that are more socialist than you ought.
Like what?
So, but no. Let's not go any further here.
You just made a claim. You got to back the claim up and ask me if I believe what you think I believe.
I will, but we're not going to
communism, Leninism. That's so disrespectful to say to somebody that comes from that, brother. Like, you think it's fun and games to call somebody a socialist and a communist. It's not, bro. Like, we've lost people because of communism. It's not lit. I am not for communism. I don't even like the idea of democratic socialism. I made videos about that. So you're misrepresenting me because you don't know. You don't know what you don't know. So I'm here to help you understand.
Right. Okay. So let's back up to when you said when I asked you if you believe if people or women should teach or exercise authority over men, then you're saying, this is your claim, that you kind of answered my question.
If you're not on mute, I don't know if it could still be echoing through your microphone, and then
oh yeah, I did forget to put myself back on mute, actually.
Because my audio might be different because I'm doing an audio share, so I might not be hearing it. I don't know.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and
by only answering the second half of the question.
Can a woman teach without exercising authority over man to you, AD? I'm just
not when they're preaching. Definitely not.
So if a woman is preaching at a woman's ministry, she's out of line. She's out of pocket to you.
If a woman is preaching at a women's ministry, she shouldn't be preaching.
She shouldn't be preaching at all.
She can teach women, but she shouldn't be preaching at all. But the point is, though, but this is all secondary stuff here, because I just want to make sure I've got the score here right. So you answered half of my question, then said I misrepresenting you by saying you believe that women could be in these church leadership roles, elders and stuff like that.
Hold on. There's a middle ground to this position, though, right? Like, it's not one or the other. There's a lot of people that don't believe women could be elders and head pastors that believe women can teach. Like, there's a middle ground there. You understand?
I'm willing.
Like,
I'm willing to give
one or the other extreme. It's very binary the way you're presenting this argument. Which again, a lot of what you present is very binary. You're either
the Bible's very binary.
You're either so again, would you identify as a fundamentalist, as everything is black and white to you?
I wouldn't identify as a fundamentalist, but I don't have a problem with someone calling me a fundamentalist.
But you are a fundamentalist because
it's fine. You can keep. I was just saying, like, he says the Bible is very binary. It's like, yes, 100%. It is absolutely black and white. People are gray for certain, but the Bible, gray? No, it isn't. Hard to understand sometimes. Yeah, Peter even admits that. Actually not spoken in a clear way, not black and white. No, that's not this book. You're thinking of a different book, buddy. Anyways, continue.
everything. You have an answer for everything. You have certainty on every single doctrinal position under the sun.
So, Ruslan, what's happened here is very interesting. I don't take offense to this, by the way. So don't hear me saying that I'm upset with you. But you literally just did the thing to me that you said I shouldn't do to you. So in other words, I know you don't identify as a liberal, but I think you're a liberal. Oh, hold on. And you took offense to that.
Yes.
And then
where you're presenting this argument, which again, a lot of what you present is very binary. You're either
the Bible's very binary. It is though, but this is all secondary stuff here because I just want to make sure I've got the score here right. So you answered half of my question, then said I misrepresented you by saying you believe that women could be in these church leadership roles, elders and stuff like that.
Hold on. There's a middle ground to this position though, right? Like, it's not one or the other. There's a lot of people that don't believe women could be elders and head pastors that believe women can teach. Like there's a middle ground there. You understand?
I'm willing,
like,
I'm willing to give
one or the other extreme. It's very binary the way you're presenting this argument, which again, a lot of what you present is very binary. You're either
the Bible's very binary.
You're either so again, would you identify as a fundamentalist as everything is black and white to you?
I wouldn't identify as a fundamentalist, but I don't have a problem with someone calling me a fundamentalist.
But you are a fundamentalist because everything you have an answer for everything. You have certainty on every single doctrinal position under the sun.
So Ruslan, what's happened here is very interesting. I don't take offense to this, by the way. So don't hear me saying that I'm upset with you. But you literally just did the thing to me that you said I shouldn't do to you. So in other words,
And that happened so fast. That might be the one part I don't. For the audience who aren't aware of what AD is about to say, it might have been better to have it slowed down, because Ruslan was nice enough to ask AD, "Do you identify as a fundamentalist?" And AD said no, and Ruslan said, "But you are." So okay, that was nice and slow.
Which is perfectly fine, by the way. I just want to say, which and AD's even about to agree. It's perfectly fine for you to say that you are something which you don't identify as a matter of truth, right? Because you can identify wrongly. But isn't that exactly what is apparently a sin on AD's part? Because that's actually what Ruslan is saying, is that it's sinful what AD did in calling him a liberal.
There's me in the side chat of AD's live stream at the time, back when it was going on, saying AD is a fundamentalist, which is necessary. So I said the which is necessary to kind of clarify that, I'm not someone on Ruslan's side being rude or something.
Yeah, and I think it's funny too, because like I already said it earlier, but it is funny, right? There's a lot of fundamentalists who don't like the term. The only truly fundamentalist person, other than people in our little crew here, who I've actually seen own the name, is Doug Wilson, and I very much appreciate him for it.
Yeah, I don't know how AD doesn't, but maybe he's just never really thought about it, because he's really the type to own all the uber conservative stuff. He likes to emphasize how he believes in giants.
Well, for sure.
Shall we continue it?
Yeah, definitely.
Identify as a liberal, but I think you're a liberal. Hold on. And you took offense to that.
Yes.
And then now, a few minutes later, you've turned around on me, knowing I don't identify as a fundamentalist, called me a fundamentalist.
Okay. Well,
and I don't take offense to it, which is why I do it to you. I don't think it's a problem.
So AD, I apologize. If you don't identify as a fundamentalist, if that's not a title that you want to wear over yourself, then I would say, man, my bad. I did not mean to label you something that you do not identify as. That's my bad. Right. I shouldn't have said that.
Fair enough. I don't take offense to it.
Video, if I've ever said that publicly about you, if there's ever a comment floating around AD is a bad fundamentalist, covert white supremacist, I would take that down in a heartbeat, because I've misrepresented you, and that's not charitable.
Okay, got it. So I think we're good there. So the point is, I do understand.
Hey, pause real quick.
Stop for a second.
I want to address a question from Honesty Angel. Do we preach the gospel to unbelievers? If so, are women allowed to do that? Absolutely. Absolutely. Women are encouraged to do that. The Bible says, without qualification or asterisk, preach the gospel to every living creature. That's why I say, for example, doing missionary work and witnessing, there's nothing in the Bible that says women can't do that. And frankly, most conservatives and fundamentalists have never believed that. I mean, the Southern Baptist Convention sends out, and has since the dawn of their existence, has sent out missionaries that are women. Y'all know that, right? The church has never had a problem sending out female missionaries. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about, and I'm not saying, obviously, honestly, I'm not talking necessarily at you in this regard, because I know we now live in the 21st century, where we unfortunately are fed a lot of bogusness, where it's no, yeah, that's what the right actually believes. That's what the fundamentalists believe, is that you shouldn't even be allowed to witness to your friend, right? No, that's not what we're saying, right? It's specifically the church authority positions. Your pastor, the guy who's going to teach doctrine to the men who are going out there. And frankly, even if you have female missionaries, the guy who's going to teach doctrine to them too, according to what Paul says, that should be a man. That should be one of your ministers, your elders, right? Those things. Church authority positions. That is what Paul is talking about. And the church always understood this until like the last 50 years, right? Again, that's not me talking at you, Honesty, because you live in a world now where the last 50 years has happened. And unfortunately, we have to dig ourselves out of the mud. But it just kind of goes to show that when people were being fundamentalists en masse, it wasn't like they had these problems that liberals actually say that we have, right? That's something that is few and far between. And if you have any comments on that, brother, go ahead.
Oh yeah, as far as how they're using the word preaching in their discussion, it is what it is. I know CJ and I are more likely to use words in a more exactly biblical way. Even though it was interesting, you were mentioning something earlier about a word that, heretic, that you use in a less biblical way. Yeah, so maybe you'll change your mind on that at some point. But that's another topic. But yeah, because I think that's what it is they were using. Ruslan looks scary there, you know. He looks kind of scary like that a lot of the time when you pause him. But yeah, they were using the word preaching more colloquially to refer to the one at the pulpit kind of a thing.
Right.
They had that conversation very sloppy anyway, so I don't know if we ever got all the nuances ironed out on their end.
Me by calling me a socialist or calling me a liberal when I'm telling you that's not what I am. And if you actually listen to my position, you would understand that that's not what I am.
So no, I won't admit that I slandered you. However, so I will admit that you don't identify as those things. If I ever said that you identified as those things, then yeah, that would be a misrepresentation, a slander, a lie, just a straight up lie. But the thing is, I didn't say.
I just like LED just not playing the game. Just like, well, here's how it is. So what else can I say? Well, this is how I did an informal debate the other day on Rebecca's channel at Bread of Life with an atheist. It was very similar to that. Just like when he wanted it to be on different terms. Just, well, I'm sorry, but it can't be on those terms. These are the real terms. Let me tell you.
Right. Well, and that is actually an important thing for us to do. In fact, I would just like to point out that's part of the reason that like I am so willing to own so many of these titles, right? Like why I have the Neanderthal logo and the Think Like a Neanderthal slogan on my watchdog, and why I own the fundamentalist label and all that is because it's kind of like one of those things where it's like, all right, you know, like I'm not even here trying to play your game. You want to call me a bunch of names? Fine. All right, cool. I'm a Neanderthal. Let's move on to the point of the matter, which is, in this particular case, should women...
So does the Neanderthal have the better argument?
Exactly. Like, because here's the thing.
If we do an internal critique to the Neanderthal's perspective of the Bible, are you doing a real internal critique? Does it actually get anywhere that you want it to get, you know?
Well, and also, just as a point of, like, the scoffer's personal pride, hey, look, if a Neanderthal can school you this way, then what does that say about you, buddy? You know what I mean? Like, that's obviously me being tongue-in-cheek, but the point is just to say, like, you know, like, there's so many of these little tactics and games that progressives do. Like, if you just dismiss them, either by not playing at all because it's not something that is honest, or by just owning it because it's whatever, it's an insult and it's fine, or any other version of it, right? It's just such a great tactic, I think, to move past their bogusness and nonsense, because you just plow right ahead. You know what I mean? And really, that's, you know, there's a lot of, I'll say this and I'll go back. Let's say we can go back to the video real quick. There's something that Christians can learn from the Trump presidency, which is that you notice that he was virtually uncancelable. And the reason is because he was not playing anybody's games but his own, right? And so he plowed ahead regardless of all of the bogusness and nonsense that people would place in front of him. It's one of the things that people really liked about him. Now, I obviously have had my criticisms. That's neither here nor there, part of this conversation. The point is, that is how you notice it's not just Trump, right? It's also people like Upchurch or Eminem or South Park or whatever, like these uncancelable people, right? I don't know why, because they don't play anybody else's games. They just plow ahead and just do what it is that they're going to do. Now, obviously, all of those people are guided only by their own selves. We are to be guided by the scriptures. But the point does still stand in that if you just don't play the game and move forward, plow forward, not only do you become uncancelable, but you also, like you see in this conversation, you pin people down and you get them to squirm and you get them to say what it is that they really believe, and not in a way that's necessarily pretty, right? Let's be honest. Ruslan is he's kind of like, he's agitated. He doesn't like this conversation right now. You know what I mean? And you guys have even heard I got a lot of sympathy for Ruslan, but that's still, let's call a spade and be factual, right? Go ahead, brother.
Yeah, I'd like to give my comparative example. And I think the man I was discussing with was named Nathan. He had some joke about Prophet Joseph Smith or something for his StreamYard name, but I think Rebecca was calling him Nathan, if I remember right. Anyway, I guess he probably has an atheist YouTube channel or something. But he came in as a joke name, so I don't know anything about his channel name or anything. Anyway, so but I think he was honest enough to sort of get straight to the point about subjective truth as opposed to objective truth, because I was addressing Romans 1, but apparently in a more effective way than usual somehow. So that's like walking a tightrope, I guess. But anyway, so he was trying to use the example of triangles that don't have 180 degrees of angles. And I was on camera, and I must have had a puzzled look on my face because I was honestly puzzled, and my face kind of shows whatever I'm thinking. It's just the way it is. So then he started explaining that, like, if the triangle is on a curved surface, and I immediately was like, wait, but the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. But if you curve it, that's no longer the shortest distance between 2 points. And then he tried to go again, and then I sort of said it again, but then I just let him go ahead anyway. But I think I won that exchange. I think when he was explaining it, and it's like he's talking about something different, it's not the shortest distance between 2 points if it's a curve, and you're no longer talking about the same thing. That's just semantics. And that has nothing to do with any idea that there's no objective truth,
Yeah, absolutely. We got about 4 minutes till we are going to pause. So let's play this just for a little bit longer, and then we'll have our last comments, and then we'll go ahead and get out of here.
Hey, that you identified as those things. I just said that you just are those things.
We're playing a semantics game, but nevertheless,
we're not playing a semantics game.
I don't appreciate those labels being thrown at me. I don't like those labels.
I can understand
those
that.
labels, and I'm saying that's not fair. It's not charitable. It's not honest. It's a misrepresentation. It is a lie.
Yep.
It is the
I just wanted to point out there's my comment that says AD is a fundy big time. The one I just highlighted, and I'll unhighlight it in a second here, but towards the top right there.
very definition of slander to me, and I take that very seriously, as should you, considering it's one of the commandments, one of the 10 commandments. I know you love the law of God.
Yeah, I do. I absolutely do. So I wonder. So here's the thing. So now let's go back to what you wanted to talk about, and then we can move on. So what was the thing that you wanted me to defend?
What thing I wanted?
I remember I stopped you and I said, "Hey, let's go back to this other thing."
Well, do you think that should be your break-off point for your next episode?
Yeah, that's actually probably a good idea because now they're about to go on to a new topic. So that's actually, I appreciate you.
Yeah, it's a pretty major segue moment.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess we'll do.
I just want to mention real quick. I think I was actually offended that like AD is supposed to be one of these guys who wears the conservatism of his Christianity on his sleeve, and he didn't own the Fundy label, and I was like offended. So I was like, "You're a Fundy," in the side chat, you know.
Well, yeah, I 100% feel you because that is my personal example is James White, but it's the same thing. It's like I get so frustrated with his like he hates that label, and it's like, dude, that's you. You are such a
that's why your show is called The Dividing Line. That's why it's called that.
Literally.
They may as well be called The Fundamentalism Show.
Straight up, though. And it's like, I don't know. I mean, he gets so like defensive over that title, and he like tries to just like associate it with people that aren't him. And it's like, bro, come on. And AD, he's not as bad as we do, but it's like it's the same thing. It's like, why don't just own it? It's what you are. Come on, man. Like we like. People want to call you a Christian, say you're a Christian. People want to call you a
AD not owning it would be sort of like if Doug Wilson didn't own it, That'd be like, come on, man. Or if me and you didn't own it, for that matter.
100% true, man. 100% true. But yeah, oh, Jamie says link. I think,
it's too late, especially for Jamie.
Well, I guess I was going to say just to be clear, Jamie, did you just have a comment on because it's not actually an open topic, it's just an open mic. So I just want to clarify, did you just have like some brief comments on the video real quickly before we got out?
And just to clarify what I was saying, we were 30 seconds away from ending the show. Now we're 4 seconds away. Of course, it's a soft ending, but
yeah, and it's like that is true. Yeah, we gotta. All right, yeah, I'll go ahead, fine. Throw it in here real quick. I don't mean to say it dismissively. I'm not trying to like shame you or anything, Jamie. It's just we are definitely trying to be quick. But I'll let you for sure give some comments. Obviously it's just been me and Brother Nicholas, and getting some comments on the video would be nice. But just make sure we keep it a little short.
And I'll just mention, I think we did a good job of addressing a lot of topics that are on the topic and how it relates to other topics, how it relates to when we go out and talk to people, or how it relates to what the Bible says, or how it relates to other approaches to looking at the woke problem, how this woke problem relates to other problems, So for a 2.5 hour show, last time I came in and pretty heavily objected to the type of objection that you had to AD. So I kind of derailed your show. But this time, I think it was exactly the kind of stuff that is supposed to be explored based on that live stream,
Well, and to be fair, the first one did not have the same benefit that this one did, where, namely that, first off, I've clarified now with AD as well. Just to make sure I knew where he was coming from. And to be fair, I did get at least some things wrong. Like he wasn't, he doesn't have any care about the statue thing, for example. And I thought that was one thing that he was saying, like that would be an essential for him, which I thought would be problematic, right? He wasn't. So but then also, just me and you clarifying our points with each other, I think was important with it too. Because,
and, I don't know if AD used the best example like that, because it was like quite different from the type of people that he actually makes content to, and then Ruslan somehow finds his content objectionable, He's not like finding some random guy from a crowd somewhere. He's not like one of those guys who goes to events and is like, look at how dumb the people are who are from this political camp. Let's talk to some dumb people in public randomly. That's not just not what AD does. So AD didn't choose a good example, because his example was more like if you go to an event and talk to one of the idiots or something, And AD is like, these are teachers who are getting paid usually at least $100,000 a year to deceive people. Usually they have at least some influence over thousands of people every month, So that's AD could have used an example that actually fit his ministry, and then that would have served the discussion a lot better.
Yeah, and I think, by the way, just for the audience to let you guys know, we probably will have a part 3 on this too, because there is still more I wanted to comment on. We still have only made, I don't think it's even at the 50-minute mark on this video yet, and it's a 2 hour and 40-minute long video. Like I said, I'm not going to comment on the whole thing.
Well, the moment comes at some point when Ruslan, he can't hide his unbiblicalness anymore, and he just completely deteriorates the discussion. And I don't think it's happened quite yet. As I remember, it happened like in like a specific moment in the whole thing. The discussion was basically ruined from there on out. So there's probably not too much commentary to make after that necessarily, in that sense, in my opinion. But
I do think I know what you're talking about, because it does. I remember I came in right after that, and because remember we were watching it live, and when I came in, I was commenting on how like this seemed like a really unfruitful conversation. But I was already an hour and like 20 minutes late. So that was why, right? Like we were at that moment or past that moment.
Yeah, so I'm like, I don't think it's happened yet, or if it did, I didn't notice it because we pause it and it changes the pacing. But I think it'll be a pretty distinct moment because it's like a logical thing that happens, where he's going to be revealed by logic to be unbiblical. So then he can no longer like have any semblance of fair discussion anymore. It becomes pure rhetoric.
Yeah, absolutely. And so Jamie did just say that he was going to actually hold off. So
okay.
Yeah, so we'll go ahead and just do the wind down now.
Okay, well, I'll let you do that. Everyone just trust Messiah.
Amen. Amen. And so I'll go ahead and turn my camera back on for the closing. I want to say a couple of things, friends. So first things first, if you liked this video, please remember to like and share this video. Get it out to all the different social media platforms which you frequent. You can go ahead and tag me on those which I am also on if you would like to do so. Those would be Minds, Parler, Gab, Facebook, and Twitter. Very much appreciate any following or anything like that there. But of course, please do be sure to get this out. What good is a message without an audience to hear it? If you like this content, please consider subscribing to this channel, and as well as hitting that bell notification to get notified every time we go live. I do these videos regularly in the sense that, or excuse me, frequently, meaning that I do them a lot, but irregularly, meaning that I don't have a set schedule. But we do these podcasts frequently talking about different apologetics and Christian-related things. A lot of times posting debates, open rooms sometimes, open topic open rooms sometimes, right? Lots of interviews, lots of other fun stuff. So if you guys are interested in that kind of stuff, please do consider subscribing. There is a Patreon link in both the live chat and the description. If you think that my work is worth it, if you would like to help me make this into a career of some kind, if you feel led and it is not in any way a trouble to you, please do consider helping me financially to try and make this into a career. I do at some point hope to be a full-time apologist and political podcaster, as well as numerous other things. And of course, I have to earn that directly from you guys. That is the very nature of that sort of job, right? So I appreciate you guys tremendously on all of those things, of course. The greatest thing you can do for this video and for the algorithm is to watch as much of the video as possible. So if you've done that or plan to do that, I very much appreciate you. And not that I appreciate anybody else any less, right? But just to say that that is an awesome thing. And thank you very much for that. I want to remind you guys again that we do have a interview coming up with Pastor Phil Fox, September the 2nd. So that's going to be very fun. Talking about being Native American and Christian. That's obviously a ways away, but it's still something that I think is absolutely awesome. And I think that's about everything as far as what we usually say at the end of these things. So let's go ahead and end with a prayer. I don't think we started with a prayer, so let's end with a prayer. Heavenly Father, I want to thank you for everything you bless us with today, Lord. I want to thank you for the opportunity to make these videos, Lord Jesus, and to bring commentary on issues like this again, Lord Jesus. I pray that you use this video for nothing more than glorification of your kingdom, Lord Jesus, and your word. I hope that we all come to greater relationship with you, that you anoint us, Lord Jesus, to want greater relationship with you. If there's some of us who struggle with that, Lord, to help our unbelief, as the scripture says, of a certain man, Lord Jesus. I ask these things in Jesus Christ's name. We give you all the glory, Lord, that we, decrease, that you may increase. I ask these things in Jesus Christ's name. Amen. Alrighty. So I appreciate you guys again. We're going to be on pretty soon. I'm not 100% sure if I'll do a video tomorrow night on this channel or Tuesday morning on this channel. We'll see what happens. I got a whole bunch of stuff I want to talk about. Part 3 on this. 2 more Ruslan responses. I wanted to do a video specifically on suicide and depression from a biblical point of view. I wanted to do videos on pornography from a biblical point of view, addiction from a biblical point of view, different things on the conquests. I have a huge list of topics that I want to address. So hopefully we're just going to be pumping out a whole bunch of content here soon. But nonetheless, I appreciate you guys a lot. Shalom. God bless you. If the Lord tarries and wills it, we will see you here soon.